This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call the March 15th, 2021 regular council meeting to order at 7 p.m. Call to order. Are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda? If not, would anyone like to make a motion to accept the agenda? Councilor Webb.
Yeah, I'll move to accept the agenda as written.
Is there a second? Thank you, Councilor Allen, seconded.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please, Stephanie.
Councilor Potter?
Excuse me, here.
Councilor Williams is absent. Councilor Webb?
Aye.
Allen?
Aye.
Mayor Hobart?
Aye.
Motion carried. And can I remind councilors and those in attendance to mute your computer when you're not talking? I'm getting some background interference. Thank you.
There's Grant. Hi, Grant. Okay, are there any presentations tonight? No presentations. Okay, with that being said, I will move right into the mayor's report. It's the second meeting of the month where we announce and choose the Citizen of the Month award, and Councilor Allen had that opportunity to choose a citizen for the month of March. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Councilor Allen. You're on mute, JR. There you go. You want to start over?
Thank you, Mayor. The person I selected tonight has lived in the Vernonia area for a long time, but he's done a lot of nice things for this town, and he's done them very quietly. I'd almost say sneaky, but it wasn't sneaky enough that I didn't notice. So I wrote some things down so I don't forget, so bear with me. I'm just going to read it. Tonight's Citizen of the Month for March 2021 was born in Portland, Oregon, then brought to Vernonia at just 3 days old. This person was lucky enough to have parents that were pillars of the community and believed in giving back. His father came to him one day in 1983 and asked him to set up a scholarship fund for the Vernonia high school students to benefit our community. That fund is now providing approximately $20,000 each year for our youth to pursue their dreams. This person's mother and father served Vernonia going back decades, and I'm sure my limited knowledge is almost an injustice. I do know they helped with one of the original baseball fields at Greenman Field way back in the day, and also funded the installation of the new lockers at our current school. Tonight's recipient also has a long history of helping and was a member of the Vernonia JCs for many years. He also served on the Jamboree Committee as well. This person also helped financially on the girls' softball field at the new school. I also want to mention granting a land easement, which was the last piece needed connecting the CZ Trail to Vernonia. If that wasn't enough, this individual also donated funds to build the entire boys' baseball field at our new school. His grandfather, Sam L. Herring, was mayor and city recorder for Vernonia about 70 years ago. And in fact, tonight's Citizen of the Month was also mayor of Vernonia back in the 70s. Tonight's recipient was taught by his parents to give back with your time or your finances if success in life allows, and he has done both. I'm honored and humbled to announce he has now funded the remaining balance for the skate park in Vernonia that will be enjoyed by generations to come. I would also like to thank the late Wilfred and Evelyn Holtz for all they have done for Vernonia while instilling the values in tonight's honoree that we all benefit from to this day. Ben Shoresman wrote some beautiful words for his grandmother Evelyn after she passed away last year that speak volumes. Quote, "We lost the best of us," end quote. I would argue that part of that best lives on in tonight's Citizen of the Month, and it's my privilege to select Randall E. Holtz for Citizen of the Month, March 2021.
Thank you, Counselor Allen. Wow, how do I follow that? That was a wonderful tribute that you took the time to interview Mr. Holtz, Randy, and what a wonderful selection. About all I can say with in light of those spoken words, JR, was thank you to Randy. I'm glad he's with us tonight. And he's been a good friend for many years for myself, and ever since I've been in the community, almost 50 years. And again, thank you, Randy, for all you've done for our community. And I do have the certificate, and if you're going to be home in the next day or two, I'd like to come up and present it to you personally, Randy. I think he's still on mute, but Randy, are you there? Would you like to say anything, Randy? Okay.
Probably not.
Okay, well, thank you, Randy. Thank you, JR. Are there any council committee meeting reports tonight?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I did have some, Mayor.
Okay.
I attended the cemetery committee, and they picked their chair, which turned out to be Bruce McNair, and their vice chair, which was Elaine. I forget her last name, I'm sorry. And that was about the gist of the whole meeting. It was kind of an organizational thing. They had some internet connection things. I had some notes, but unfortunately I didn't bring them all with me, but I'll try to do better next time. But I think they're just now getting going. And I'm looking for more on the agenda next time. So that's about all I really had to report, unless I think of something else, so I'll let you know. But it was mostly just picking officers.
Thank you, Councilor Allen. Any other reports from committees? Okay. Moving on to any topics from the floor tonight, Stephanie. One, okay.
I have a letter to read into the record.
Okay.
Good evening to the City of Vernonia City Council. My name is Susan Wagner, and I work for Community Action Team in St. Helens. My business address is 125 North 17th Street in St. Helens, Oregon. There was discussion and a hearing, and after a hearing, on March 1st, 2021, regarding Riverside Drive and allowing a change to include RVs in addition to manufactured homes. There were several threads of discussion during the hearing regarding low-income housing, the conditions of the homes there, and the population living there. I would like to bring to the attention and remind the city that as part of the buyout CDBG and FEMA process, the city of Vernonia committed to replacing the low-income housing that was taken out of the city through demolition of the homes. 5 homes were built on 5th and 6th Street, but that does not come close to replacement the number of homes which were demolished. This is not intended as testimony regarding the situation, simply to remind the council and the city of the obligation to provide additional low-income housing in the community. Had I been aware that this question would have been brought up as part of the hearing, I would have gladly attended the hearing live to provide this information as part of the testimony. Best regards, Susan.
Okay, thank you, Susan Wagner. Sorry you were not able to be informed about the public hearing. Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda for acceptance. Library meeting minutes for December 2020. You found on page 1 and 2. Any discussion or questions about that meeting? Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I did read the minutes. I had a question. I thought it talked about hiring.
Well, you're coming in and out, JR.
They say in the meeting minutes, it talked about hiring another person at the library. Do we know who that is yet?
I believe it's Mrs. Roberts. Unless they've hired somebody more recently.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? If not, anyone like to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes for December 2020? Library meeting minutes. Mr. Webb.
Yeah, I'll move we accept the consent agenda for acceptance.
So moved, Councilor Webb. Second.
Let's look at
Thank you, Councilor Williams. Second that motion. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Councilor Potter,
Aye.
Councilor Williams,
Aye.
Councilor Webb,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councilor Allen.
Aye.
Motion carried. I think I'm getting interference from JR when you're unmuted. I don't know if you're experiencing the echo too, but I'm seeing it. Thank you.
Okay, consent agenda for approval. City Council work session meeting minutes for February 22nd, 2021. City Council meeting minutes for March 1st, 2021. Any discussion or questions on those two meeting minutes? If there's no discussion or questions on those two meeting minutes, would anyone like to make a motion to accept those meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Councilor Williams. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor Webb. Call the roll, please, Stephanie.
Councilor Allen,
Aye.
Councilor Williams,
Aye.
Councilor Webb,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councilor Potter. You're muted, Councilor Potter.
All right. Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Moving right into unfinished business, staff report, downtown beautification survey can be found on page 13 through 15.
Mayor Rick, do you need to
Yeah.
back up one? Do you need to back up one?
Nope, we're in unfinished business now.
What about the meeting minutes for the city council?
We just made a motion and we approved those.
That was for the work session.
I did both meeting minutes.
Okay, sorry.
It's one
I thought
heading.
you just did the one.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like your motion to be reflected for adopting both council meeting minutes, Grant?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes. Excuse me.
Okay, moving back to unfinished business. Staff report, downtown beautification survey can be found on page 13 through 15.
Okay, so following the discussion at the work session, you guys asked us to bring a draft survey for you to amend or approve, and then a page of the potential amenities that maybe you'd be discussing. So we went with, similar to how, pretty simplistic survey, similar to what we did before. And then left them space to kind of tell us other information, and then asked if they understand that the responsibility of the sidewalk in front of their property is their responsibility, because I think that's something a lot of them maybe don't understand. The other thing we were thinking is we could take them a little brochure about the code and where it states that that's their responsibility, so that if they say, well, how's that, we could have a little brochure that points to where in the code that can be found. And then the following page is the different pictures that we've found of different amenities. Ashland does move out planters with evergreens during the holidays, and then takes care of them somewhere else during the rest of the year. So it's more they're brought out. So that's why I included both the picture of the evergreen in a planter and the street lined with lighted evergreens. So is there any amendments council would want to propose to the survey? And then we could, after we go through any amendments you want there, then we could follow up with amendments to or additions to the picture page.
Counselor Webb.
So it's probably not regarded as an amenity, but if we're going to kind of change, and when we had our workshop, there was a lot of discussion about just the general appearance downtown as it is now. I'm kind of wondering if that should, just clean up what we have and maintain what we have. Would that be one of the questions? Maybe that's just one of the options, because we got one, just leave it the way it is now. Well, someone, well, I don't want to leave it the way it is now, but if it was just cleaned up, then I would be happy. You see where I'm coming from? Yeah, it's not viewed as an amenity, but from where we're at, it probably would be. So maybe you might want to add that bring it up to a new level and maintain it there.
So I guess I see how that comes across weird. I was thinking the planter strip area is what would remain the same and not change it. So just put pavers, no amenity there is what that first one, I see how it's unclear, but that's what I was getting at is, would they like nothing there in that planter strip? So don't know how to do the cleanup one because cleanup and versions of cleanliness or some is different for everyone. So I don't know, how would you want that worded? Give me a version of what you'd like it to like say, because I don't know exactly
Maybe
where.
maintain to a higher standard than currently is or something. Uh, just knowing that we're wanting to maintain it in a better condition than current condition. But yeah, to your point, that would be the one with no additional amenities within the strip.
Counselor Potter, you're muted.
Wouldn't that, excuse me, that additional information about the cleanliness, wouldn't that fall under bullet number 2? That the citizens could write that in instead of maybe having to put it in the survey? Maybe it doesn't bug them. Maybe people don't see it. Maybe let them write it in. I think that's what number 2 is for.
Maybe we could ask them, Josette, in a question, would they be willing to participate like in a April cleanup day where they'd be willing to help pressure wash the front of their side and the sidewalk and or their building and just, maybe just a general cleanup if they'd be willing to participate in an all city cleanup day. Might be a good thing to ask them. Then they'd have an interest in it, and
Okay. I'm gonna work on amending a version and then share my screen so you guys can like approve something. So I'm not ignoring you. I'm just.
any other, Counselor Potter?
Vernonia has a cleanup day, so maybe we could combine it with our cleanup day and focus more on the downtown area. I think they do a lot of cleanup group that I think Rachel Organ is the one that spearheads that, but maybe combine that with cleaning up, doing extra projects downtown.
Well, I know when Vernonia Pride was serving our community several years ago, they did have a spring cleanup day, and I'm not sure if I've known of any cleanup days in the last couple of years. I don't think there has been any. What's the one day, Josette, you and I were talking about
So April 17th is when the hazardous household waste is coming to Spencer Park to have citizens bring things they can't dispose of at the dump, and they take different things. And that's typically, cleanup usually falls around that third week in April. It usually was around Earth Day in the old days. And it was a Solve kind of project where Solve would give, well, it was Pride at the time, sometimes bags or gloves to dispose of. In the past, we've done, we've had code enforcement involved in that, and so people that had really a lot of debris at their homes, the city would bring a 30-yard dumpster, and code enforcement, to get them to compliance, would give them a coupon if they were someone that was of low income or couldn't didn't have the money to get the debris to the dump. And so she would give out coupons during the month of March to people that needed to get into compliance. And then we had a dumpster manned where people could dump with a coupon, could dump their debris there to get in compliance with code. So we've done different versions of it without kind of a spearheading group like Pride was. In those days, it's kind of hard to wrangle everyone in the community to do it on that day. But I did put a question number 4 would be something like, would you and your business be willing to participate in the city downtown cleanup day? Yes or no? So, any other things you want on the survey?
Counselor Williams.
Yes, I was wondering if we could find out if people want trees, or maybe they're not opposed to trees, and have it be optional instead of, just everybody gets a tree, even if they don't want one.
Well, I think what we're hoping to, Grant, is get this information from the business owners, and then you guys would have a following meeting where you would determine where we're going with any amenities or planters. Is that right? This is just a step to gather information from the downtown property business owners, and then we'll see. Then it will come back to you with the results of who said what or what the ideas were. Is that how everyone else understands it?
Yeah. Are these business owners going to identify themselves? Or is this?
Well, I have at the top that there's the name of the business and the address.
Okay. I
so
see
at
that.
minimum, we'll have it filled out for the address when we hand it to them, or go through it with them, whichever way it works out. So we should be able to identify different answers and who kind of feels what.
Thank you.
Counselor Allen.
You're muted, buddy.
Yeah, A says I would like, B is I would like trees replaced with appropriate species. I don't think any of us were ever really talking about putting all the trees back. So maybe I would like some trees replaced as an option instead of some people think all the trees back where they were. Some of them were obviously problematic for people.
So should I put, I would like the trees replaced in front of my property with appropriate size and species?
I like that.
Because then they're going to tell us, hey, I would put them in front of my business.
Or maybe how many trees you would like in front of your place. Maybe they just want one, and maybe we end up with 2 or 3, 4 trees scattered around and other things that we come up with. So I just want the people to know we're not council's not set on putting every tree back right where they were. Obviously, we haven't made any determinations, but when you read that, it's almost like we're going to get all those trees back right where they were.
Okay.
That's what I was driving at.
Okay, any other suggestions for staff to improve the survey? Everybody understands how this is going to work. Well, go ahead, Stephanie.
I was just hoping to clarify that we're talking about property owners, not just business owners. It's different.
Right.
Yeah, so we're talking to just the business owner in this survey. It may be that council determines they want another survey of something else, but we're starting with the people that are responsible for the sidewalk first.
Which is the property owner, not just the business owner.
Correct.
They have to own the property.
Yes, thank you.
So if you guys take a look, I added A, I changed to, I would like the planter strip to remain how it is, no changes. B, I would like the tree or trees replaced in front of my business with appropriate species, size, and height. And then I added down here, so would you and your business be willing to participate in a city downtown cleanup day? Yes or no? Any other things you wanted added? Or did I do any of it how different than you wanted?
I think those are nice improvements.
Yeah, I think those are, that's a good survey, Josette, I like to feel.
Okay, do you guys want to move on to the, hold on, let me save this really quick. Do you want to move on to the picture page?
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to see a picture of that you feel isn't, or you want something different in a picture?
I like those selections.
Can I have the floor?
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Sorry, this just came to mind and I saw this before, but since one of the options is leaving it as it is without any additional amenities, for lack of a better word, should we add a picture of that?
Wouldn't that just fall under A? I want to leave it as it is.
That's what I mean. Since that's one of the options, should we have that in the picture page as well? I didn't think of it before.
Might not hurt.
Okay. Anything else anybody can think of?
That's a nice selection.
Okay. So staff will work to get these prepared and get in touch with the different property owners for the 4 blocks of downtown. Once we have the information back, then we'll probably have you guys come to you guys at your 1st of April meeting and have you set a work session or a meeting to go over the info.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Josette.
Yep.
Okay, speaking of work sessions, we'll move on to unfinished business. Item B, work session schedule can be found on page 16.
Okay, this one's brought to you by me. Short and sweet, just asking for you guys to schedule your work session, discuss sidewalks and waivers of remonstrance. I have availability from staff. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to look at your calendars or not. I can give you some proposed dates, or we can just shoot from the hip. But we're looking at sometime after the 6th of April.
Which is the first regular council meeting of the month, so.
That's the day after.
Oh, I see. The 5th is
Yeah.
the first meeting, yeah.
If you guys are open to suggestions, my suggestion would be to go with the 12th, since it's on Monday, and you guys don't already have one on that day.
Not yet.
I'm fine with it. Stephanie?
Sounds good.
Everyone gave a thumbs up, looks like, so
Perfect. All right, I will schedule it for the 12th at 6.
thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Will we be working on both items or just one?
Just one.
Okay.
Does he mean sidewalks and waivers as two different items?
Yeah. We'll
I think
do
we're
the
working on
package.
both of them, right, Stephanie?
Yes, sorry, I thought you meant the downtown trees doing both of them
No,
at the
no,
same
no, I'm
time.
sorry. Yeah,
No, those are connected. They're the same
yeah,
thing.
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank you. 6 o'clock.
correct.
Thank you, Stephanie. Moving on to staff report, CZ Trail Merchant Sign Review. Josette.
Okay, so I brought you guys this, along with Dale, who's here, for you guys to review kind of the outlay of the future merchant sign. And I'll let Dale take it away.
Good, thanks, Josette. The key thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight is simply the list of businesses and points of interest, etc., that that is shown on the sample sign or the mock-up sign. Because inevitably there's limited space on this overall kiosk, and that means someone's going to get left out. And I wouldn't want to blindside you or anybody else by you not knowing who I am thinking about sort of including. And as we all know, I don't know your community the way you guys do. So even with the best of intentions, I may leave something out that's important to you or other people in the community. The ones that I've included, to a great degree, I can sort of say, I strongly recommend that you include this particular point of interest or business, and here's the reason. But I'd have to tell you, there's some that I don't feel a strong recommendation on. I've included a couple of apps under the theory that maybe people in the community and within the county, but close to Vernonia, might want to do an Airbnb or something like that, which might bring more business in. So there's trade-offs in terms of who's listed, who's not, and although there's limited space, it doesn't mean that we can't sort of change the priorities that I have put out for you in this draft. That's the key thing that I wanted to check with you on, is essentially whether you guys would recommend that we consider anybody that's not already on this list, or drop anybody that's on the list to make room for someone else. I'm going to come back to you one more time before this sign is finalized. Largely, at that point, it will be to show you essentially what the near finished product looks like, including the overall look and format. But the upper left quadrant under, I think it's restaurants, or maybe it was groceries and gas, is pretty close to what I think the final would look like. So if you've got questions about that in particular tonight, feel free to ask them. With that, I'd simply like to open it up and see if you guys have questions and concerns.
Councilor Williams.
I have a couple recommendations. First of all, I think it would be more space economic if you put "Welcome to Vernonia" on one line and didn't take up so much of the room for the text that you want.
Okay.
And when I first saw that, it looked very busy. It's almost like it's so much information. It's like handing somebody a book with 1,000 pages, and it looks too busy to me.
Okay. And you mean the overall sign?
Yes. And I think you could have better space economy if you moved Vernonia up to one line with welcome. That
Yeah,
would
I
give
got
you
that.
that would give you additional space. And
Mhm.
it just I don't know how anybody else feels, but it just looks really busy to me. Like there's too much stuff on it.
If I could ask a question, Grant, and in terms of what I might do to deal with the busyness, to me, there's two potential areas. One might be, well, actually, to I'll just leave it at that. Do you have any suggestions for how to make it less busy, or things about it that make it particularly busy?
Well, let me ask you another question. I believe there's going to be 4 signs altogether on that corner. Is that correct?
No, there's
Just
actually
the 2?
Just the 2. There's a history sign and this sign that basically, when the visitor is standing facing north towards Bridge Street, they would be looking at this sign, and the history sign will be to their left. The back sides of both of those signs will be for approaching traffic, and they will essentially say parking on them.
I'm not really sure how to make a suggestion to make it look less busy. I mean, there's just so many items on it. It looks crowded. It's like, you know, when you're going through a city that you're not familiar with, and you open up the map, and there's so many things on that map, you can't find what you're looking for. I think
Okay.
that's what I'm driving at.
Good.
So
Okay.
can I show you something, Grant? It might just be that your eye's going to Dale's handwriting. No offense, Dale.
That could be. That could be the problem.
This is how the temporary one was laid out. So it's a little bit cleaner under headings with how he has it written. It's really just a number, a name, and then a detail. So it will look a little more
Professional.
less busy because the whole line won't be filled up with, if that makes sense. So then this is what the map looked like related to that, was just numbers and where they could be found. So if that helps you any.
Well, having it actually printed and not handwritten does help, but I still think "Welcome to Vernonia" on one line would be a real improvement. But
Yeah,
Okay.
this one had "Welcome to Vernonia" on one line. See that, Grant?
Yeah.
It had it
It's
on
a very
one line.
simple. It's a very simple change to make.
There
And
you
actually,
go.
I think
I wasn't able to see that. Thank you. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. Thank you.
okay.
Dale, I noticed a comment by Ben on the Hawkins swimming pool. It's called the Dewey Pool.
Dewey Pool.
Dewey Pool.
Good.
And wading pool at Hawkins Park, yeah.
Okay, and
then
I'm gonna.
One other change, Dale. It's Peel's Landing on his sign. I noticed that today when I was getting in my car.
Okay. Good.
Counselor Webb.
Am I missing Napa Auto Parts on here?
If you would like it there, I think I didn't include them primarily because I figured a tourist probably wouldn't be interested in shopping there. I think there's room to add them. And I think the only question I would say is that are there others that you would want to add? I think that's an important point for me to make. I think there's room possibly to add more. So if Napa is one that you would like me to add, I can do that.
Councilor Williams.
I know that we do not currently have a bike repair shop. I would like to see a space or two left open for a future business that would cater to the type of people that we're trying to meet their need, providing parking. If they have a blowout and they don't have an extra tube, I mean, whatever. Hopefully somebody's going to provide that service here in the near future as we get more people coming in on bikes.
Yeah, I have been told that the True Value, Vernonia True Value has bike repair, some bike repair. I'm not sure how extensive it is, and parts, and I don't know how extensive that is. And their byline, the little additional thing to the right of their name, I'm going to encourage them to highlight that. But I still think that your point's well taken, and I'm happy to leave an extra line or two for future businesses that you may want to add.
Go ahead, Josette.
Well, so Grant, part of the deal is these are all specific sites we'd be sending someone to. So say Creatures goes out of business and a bike repair goes in there. These are just going to be vinyl where we could cover over that existing business and put a new one in versus leaving blank and having like the empty storefront feel of a blank spot.
Right.
We can just overlay when a new business switches out.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I like Councilor Webb's suggestion about Napa. I think that's a pretty important. People drive all the way out here from Portland or wherever, and so they need auto parts too a lot. So, and True Value definitely, I think, is a good business there. Councilor Potter.
Another one that's important, I think, is the liquor store, liquor hardware.
Right, and I actually included them. My handwriting's so bad, you probably didn't notice it, but
it's right below True Value.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's on there. Dale, when are you going to bring back a finished product for us to look at? Do you have any idea?
my guess is that it won't be any quicker than about 3 weeks because I got to get in touch with all of the businesses, essentially I've got to get all of their write-ups, get them essentially typeset by the graphics people that are volunteering to help me out. So I doubt it's any sooner than 3 weeks. Does that work for you guys?
Oh, yeah, I was just wondering when you're going to be ready to go with it. So
yeah, this will probably be one of the last signs that gets posted. And in fact, one thought I had is that we can put that temporary sign up on that kiosk if Josette and you would like to in the interim. This is assuming the other signs get pulled together quickly enough. Casey Garrett is hoping to have the history signs, I think, posted by maybe mid to the end of April, something like that. So once the kiosks are all up, then it's a matter of essentially trying to get things scheduled to put the other signs up, and they will come in basically waves. They won't be done at once. At least that's what I'm currently expecting. I do hope that we are able to have them all in by early May, but I can't guarantee that. So anyway, I want to let you know that.
okay, thanks, Dale. Josette.
Dale, so the only thing that just one of my staff brought up is Adventist urgent care should probably be under services and not points of interest. Only because if someone parks there and needs urgent care, they're going to look on the services line
Yeah.
more than the, yeah.
Okay. Good point.
Maybe there ought to be a medical line.
Actually, so the thought occurred to me that, you know, if you need services, back to your comment, Grant, about it being busy, if you need services, you want it to be obvious on this sign. And for their location, rather than having a dot or something like that, I think I will put a red cross on it.
Well, and then we could go so far as to do shops and services as two different categories. Like where, do you know what I mean? There's enough there that you could split it into services are your bank, healthcare, ATMs, and then shops are the shops.
Well, we might want to, it might be a good thing for us to talk
Laundromat would
about.
be a service, not a shop.
Right. One challenge that I've got is that if we try to retain the color coding of the types of businesses, or, you know, of these categories, beyond the ones that I've shown there, the colors start to get so close that it's hard to distinguish between the different categories. I think I can address the concern, though, by the following. Just coincidentally, first of all, the way I'd envision listing each of the businesses in each category is basically going from left on the map to right. And because the healthcare is basically on the far left, it would be the first or second item in that category. Between that and the fact that we would use a red cross rather than a circle to denote its location, I'm hopeful would also catch people's eye.
Counselor Williams.
On a side note, is that clinic open on Saturday and Sunday?
I do not know.
I don't
I
think it is.
believe they do have Saturday hours, Grant.
Okay, for emergency services as well?
I think the urgent care part of that adds a Saturday component.
Okay, because that's important.
Yes, as a general rule, you know, for example, the Pioneer Museum is a good example. For businesses that just have what I'd call odd hours, I think it's going to be important to show those in the little narrative that they have space for, and I'll be recommending that to the clinic.
Stephanie.
I just got a note from a citizen that the library and city hall are not included.
Right.
Yeah, so I think part of the deal is that this sign is only, I mean, it's not town-wide, so people are going to be biking here or driving here, parking at that trailhead, getting their bike out. City Hall potentially wouldn't be open. So I think that's the tweak, is that we got to kind of pare down what we're expecting people that pull in there or bike in there to want to see. I don't know that they're going to go to the library or City Hall.
What about the police
Maybe
department?
police department would be a good symbol to have, like a police department symbol where City Hall is in case they need police assistance.
Okay.
But that's kind of the thing, is you could do every little thing. And
Counselor Allen.
It should be like police, fire, and medical. I was thinking the same thing as Joe said earlier. I think there should be a section for police, fire, or medical, or else, some kind of an emergency section maybe, because something happens, you're in a strange town, you got a person having a heart attack, you don't even know where the fire station is maybe. I understand City Hall's not always open, but I don't know how big the map's going to be, and I don't know, I can't see it, Dale, if there's a spot that says you are here on the map, so people kind of orientate themselves. I don't
There,
on there.
there will
I
be
think
a
I see a
you
little
are,
symbol, but
there will be a you
Okay.
are here.
anyway, that's
Um,
something I would think about is
Good.
I think we're
Okay,
breaking up pretty bad.
Counselor Williams.
I'm kind of curious as to how large the print will be on like the points of interest. You got Adventist Clinic. Is it going to be 1/2 an inch tall letters, 3/4 of an inch? Do you have an idea of the size?
I do, although my memory's fading a little bit. For the amount of space between each business is 2 inches. I believe the name of the business is 1 inch high, and I believe the little short descriptor below or next to it, to the right of the business name, I believe it's either a 1/2 or 3/4 inch high. Basically, we're using the standards that are recommended for signs that are read, I think, within 5 feet, something like that.
Okay.
Although I believe those letter sizes that I just gave you are legible beyond that.
Right. Yeah, I know some letters, they're very broad, and then some are very compact and more tall. You can get more
Mhm.
letters on a line if it's the compact type of letter.
Right. And but we've got to ensure that it's overall it's legible.
Right.
And I'm really relying on the graphics people that I'm working with who have a professional expertise with it, I
Good.
think I would say.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions or suggestions? Counselor Webb.
Well, back to the emergency services thing. The obvious thing, somebody's having a medical emergency, you're going to call 911. But what's more difficult for people that are new to the community is the non-emergency numbers. I mean, basically emergencies, you call 911. But when you're just wanting to get in contact with the police department, without, it's not an emergency, but there's information you need to get. That's probably the numbers that are more important. Maybe the city hall number, the police non-emergency number, and I think that non-emergency number is the same for police or fire. We can get a message in, so maybe flesh that out a little better if we're going to add that section. But that's the numbers that people struggle to find. That's just my opinion.
Okay, well, I definitely think I've heard fairly clearly that we need to add that something along those lines. I'll work with Josette on the details, and frankly, I'm glad to sort of give you guys another look at the next revision or something like that, so that you're not waiting until the very end on some of these details, if you like. I just don't want to.
What about putting just its own little sign? Making its own little sign for police, fire, whatever, even if it's smaller, how much room I'm trying to visualize. I know how big the kiosks are, but that might be one option too, is that in laying it out, we see that we could just do a metal sign that the city just puts the non-emergency numbers. I don't know what the layout looks like for this kiosk. Is this the only thing that fits there?
This sign is basically going to take up the whole kiosk. We're trying to leave the bottom 2 feet unused. That is, the sign won't go that far down because that's pretty low for anybody to read the size type that we've got. But again, this strikes me as something that once you and I can work on this separately, Josette, and once I have a better understanding of who you might want to list, if you had a list of individual numbers, I'm sure we can figure out a way to do that. If that's what you'd like.
You could even do it along the bottom that says, for emergencies, dial 911. For non-emergencies, dial blah, blah, blah. And then like a police shield or something just on the bottom, because it kind of gives people a heads up.
Yeah, and we could put it in large enough type, larger than the rest of the sign as well. I think that's definitely one possibility. So, okay.
Councilor Williams.
I was under the impression that the sign was going to be wider than it is tall, but in the picture that I have, it's much taller than it is wide. Am I right or wrong?
The brown, if you're looking at it right now, the brown edges and background represents the total amount of wood backing, is the way I would call it, or talk about it. And that is about 7 feet high, and it's 6 feet wide. So it's a little bit higher than it is wide. And we will probably, especially with that "Welcome to Vernonia" banner at the very top, we'll use most of the top end, and the bottom end will either the bottom 1.5 to 2 feet will either be blank, or we'll put something in very large letters, perhaps like this police, fire, medical, 911.
Okay, well, thank you, Dale, for participating tonight. And we'll be anxious to see what you come up with, what you and Josette come up with in a few more weeks. And I think we're ready to move on. Thank you for being a part of our meeting, Dale.
Okay, thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right on to new business. Staff report, city facilities, maintenance, and cemetery caretaker position. Hi, Angie.
Hello. So do you guys want me to read this whole thing, or did you have a chance to look it over?
I've looked at it.
Okay, so if everybody's kind of read through it, I'll just kind of summarize. I got to give a lot of credit to Ben. He worked hard on this. So we all had a little bit of input, but he put this report together. So as most of you probably already know, and gleaned from this, we depend on Public Works a lot for all the little honeydew problems that we have with all of our facilities. Everything, all the little minor things. I mean, several years ago, we had a maintenance person, and it was actually really nice that we had somebody that was just dedicated to do all of that tedious stuff day to day, and we didn't have to bother Public Works with that. So like we've stated in here, it's really hard to find someone that's willing to do that part-time with no benefits. On top of that, we also are in need of a new caretaker for the cemetery, as Tom left us a few months ago. So same issue there, finding somebody that's willing to work, less than half time with no benefits is hard to come by. So our thought was to combine the two positions. In an ideal situation, we would find this amazing person that could fit the bill for everything we want to have done. We have the job posting, which I dropped the ball and did not put it in the folder, so you don't have that in front of you. But
we would like to post that, but we didn't want to put it out there until we got your guys' kind of input on the funding of this position. So obviously the maintenance part of it would come from general fund, but the problem is that the cemetery has a lack of revenue. And even with the current adopted budget, if Tom had stayed on full-time and worked and used up the whole salary budget, the cemetery would be not in the hole, but we would have very, very limited amount of money to roll forward to next year. So we looked at funding the cemetery portion out of the cemetery. However, that was a cost that was just way beyond what that fund can support on its own. So our thought was to just plan to fund the entire thing out of the general fund. And then each year during budget, we would look at what the cemetery is doing and what numbers have come in throughout the year to see if they can afford to fund any part of that, whether it's just a kick down to the general fund of a certain amount that we determine based on the revenue or whatever. But what we're asking tonight is just council's buy-off on whether or not we can propose in the upcoming budget to fund this position entirely out of the general fund. And the way I would have it budgeted is 40 hours a week, which is really not the intention, but we're just budgeting for the fullest amount possible. My guess and Ben's guess is it would probably average out to maybe 25 to 30 hours a week. But with that, the benefits would kick in. And there again, I have to assume that this person would have a family and want the biggest benefit package that we offer. So that's what it would look like in the budget. But my guess is it would come in under that. But like I said, before we proposed that, I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on what you thought about the funding of that out of taking care of the cemetery out of the general fund. Ben, do you want to add to any of that? I'm sure I mangled it really well.
You did great, Angie. We were doing real good on the cemetery. This year has been tough. Most of our internments are cremations, and people aren't in a hurry to do it. So the only internments that we've had this year, or the last year and then some with COVID, has been direct, people, casket burials. And a lot of people have called and they want to have a service for a cremation burial, and they just keep putting it off. I've got one gal who's called me several times and was kind of looking at dates, and she keeps putting it off, and they have 2 souls to inter, and so it's been pretty rough. That being said, we do have we got pricing and the rules and regulations for the urn garden and the columbarium. We're going to start seeing an ad in the newspaper for that. So I am hoping that in the next year, the cemetery component will turn around.
I'd like to make a little comment. I like the idea personally. I think there is a need for a maintenance person around town, and I'm 70 years old. I'm too old to be climbing up on ladders, putting on canopies anymore. We have a beautiful cemetery that's really made some really nice improvements in the last couple of years, and it's only going to get better, I think, with this position and the key is to finding the right person. One who's self-motivated, one who doesn't have to go to Public Works to ask questions, one who has knowledge of electrical and carpentry and a general all-around maintenance person. I think that's the key. And to find that person, I think it's going to take some work. And I think there should be a good evaluation and process there. So, but I do like the idea of it.
Okay. Yeah, we have a pretty extensive job description that Ben worked on, and yeah, it's very thorough. So we're not gonna just hire somebody because they show up for an interview. So it would definitely be a very intensive process.
Counselor Potter.
Do you have an idea about per hour that person would be making, ballpark figure? That's for Josette or for Ben or Angie. What
We do, but that's not really, I mean, we'll flesh all that out in the budget proposal.
Okay. You know, my thought about this, I think it's a great idea to combine both the maintenance and the caretaker together. I think that that person should be compensated because it's going to have to be someone that knows a lot of stuff. Carpentry, electrical, like Rick said, and you pay for all those services. That's years of experience, work experience, that type of thing. You're not going to get any quality type worker with low wage and expect a lot of extra work.
Yeah, we know that.
So that's my concern. You'd have to be a living wage for someone.
Go ahead, Josette.
So you said something there, Lorna. So any electrical that the city has done has to be done by a licensed electrician. So I don't think we're going to be troubling this person with real electrical work because we're commercial with state codes, we have to do that. So, but there are other skills. We get what you're saying with it not being, a lowball job, but just to clarify, electrical would be done by an electrician.
I think part of the electrical component was like changing light bulbs or other little things like that. And then in the job description, it describes in that maintenance role, that person needs to identify electrical issues and then work with the contractor on those and other larger plumbing issues or anything where the city needs to hire a proper contractor. That's part of what they need, some of the knowledge they need to have in those fields.
Counselor Webb.
Okay. Question for Josette. I think we've been here once before on the previous council. The decision to add a new employee is at the administrator's discretion, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a bridge that's already.
The reason we're bringing it to you guys is ultimately the funding does not exist in this fiscal year for this version we're proposing, how we're proposing it. So we can bring on people with what's budgeted in a fiscal year, but we're hoping to bring this person on well before July 1, right? So we need to get your buy-off on it because we're doing something that isn't clearly outlined in the budget. So that's why we didn't want to just be like, oh, we hired this new person and we're taking it out of the general fund. And that's not how the budget's laid out. So that's why the transparency and bringing it to you guys. Typically, if money was budgeted, that decision is up to me as the administrator. But this is a little bit different in that the money isn't quote unquote appropriately budgeted for a maintenance person and cemetery caretaker out of general fund right now.
Yeah,
We're just
Okay.
trying to be,
yeah, I was asking, my question to you guys and why we brought it forward was, are you going to support the idea of paying for the cemetery caretaker out of the general fund? Because that's how I plan to present it in the budget if we find this person and we hire him. We're not asking permission to hire someone. We're asking for your opinion on whether or not you think that as a whole, the five of you and the budget committee are going to be on board with us paying for that out of general fund, because the cemetery just can't support that person right now. So that's the question.
Counselor Webb.
The follow-up question. We should have documentation of how many hours public work staff has worked doing these jobs over the previous year. Don't we track
A lot
that?
of jobs that don't get done.
There's jobs that don't get done.
There's lots of
I
things
see
that
gutters
need to
are
be done.
still flowing over down there, but we have used them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a scale, what magnitude they would be, the handyman part of the job versus the cemetery part of the job.
The cemetery part of the job is, we're planning it to be what it was when Tom was up there, so about 800 hours a year. So that part we've already decided that that's what it's going to look like. The maintenance part is just going to be the way we're going to, when we post it and when we interview, we're going to make sure that person's aware that this is not a guaranteed 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. You're just going to work when, it's going to be a flexible schedule. So today you might work a full day, tomorrow it might be 4 hours. And that's what we're looking for. And that's why we're hoping, well, that's why we're planning to offer the benefits, because if you just try to find somebody that you're locked in at 20 hours a week, we're not gonna find anybody. Not anybody decent anyway. So our goal is to have somebody that's gonna work an average of 25 to 30 hours a week, and they're gonna get benefits, and that's gonna attract someone that has the skill set that we're looking for. And then if there's no work, then that's it. They don't work that day, or they go home early, or whatever. We're not gonna have somebody just sitting around waiting for something to break.
Counselor Williams.
Well, I think it's an excellent idea to combine the two positions. Obviously, in the summer, the maintenance of the cemetery is going to take precedent over everything else. But it's also going to free up time in the winter for the things that others have already mentioned, like the gutters, and making sure that things that have maybe been overlooked a little bit, like painting bathrooms or, upgrading paper dispensers and just lots of things that really need to be done, but they get put on the back burner because there's not really somebody free to do it. So I guess another question would be, how would it impact the general fund? I mean, is it like 1%? I mean, how would it impact the general fund if we were to approve it?
Well, it would be the equivalent of that. It's basically, what we say was 38% of the position. I can't remember, but I'm working on the budget draft right now, so that's what we're going to figure out. So that's not what we're worrying about tonight. All we're worrying about tonight is whether or not you guys would be in favor of that if it financially worked out for the general fund. My preliminary draft that I worked on today will be fine. And then in future years, assuming the cemetery we start selling the columbarium, little niches and all those things in the urn garden, and we'll generate the revenue that we can cover a portion of that position or even all of it at some point. But the fact is, we need somebody up there, and
using the general fund. excuse me, I'm in favor of using the general fund. I think it's a good use of resources to cover both those bases.
Stephanie, do you require a motion tonight to move forward to, no, you don't, just general consensus?
Just a
Okay.
consensus.
Mayor Hobart, Councilor Allen has been trying to get the floor for a while.
I just saw him and I saw him. Go ahead, Bill, JR.
I wish, can anybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I wish the financials would have been given. I kind of did my own. It looks like you guys are talking about $50,000 worth or so, probably counting insurance benefits for a part-time employee. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Angie, but if we went 25% out of cemetery, would be about 12.5K, and general fund be 37.5K. And I'm just kind of adding 20,000 for the health insurance. So I'm just kind of getting a rough idea. It's been pretty obvious that the,
Go ahead, sorry.
I say it's just been kind of obvious the last couple of years that our fund and the cemetery has been going kind of downhill instead of even or uphill. So I think we can all see the writing on the wall there.
Right.
Is this person also going to do the work that Ben's been doing as far as if there's a funeral, go up there and take care of things? Is that what you're kind of looking for, Josette or Angie, either one of you?
That was the intention, yeah.
I mean, the
Okay,
city
so
can have, I was going to say the city has two options. There's a landscaping component up there that we can just hire somebody part-time. I mean, we could even hire a contractor to go up there and properly mow and stuff. But then there's the component of helping inter the dead, dealing with families, funeral directors, and that sort of thing. And so that's, maybe that's a broader decision about what direction we need to go. But part of that, along with that, is, I'm the only one doing it. If the city doesn't, we don't have a backup. I mean, Stephanie is the backup, and I don't really expect that she's going to go up and do do burials and meet with families and stuff up there. So there, that's something I've struggled with in that position for a long time. Do we just have somebody to mow the grass and pick up sticks, or do we have somebody that's really a caretaker who we're setting up for the long term to maintain the cemetery and then also, take over some of those responsibilities and is able to put on a shirt and tie and meet with the family and bury their dead? That's two different. Those are two different things.
Okay, any other discussion, or Counselor Webb?
So, and I thought I heard a two-part question to this. Since this isn't currently allocated in the current budget, do you need our blessing to do that currently? I see Josette's getting ready to answer me. And then the other would be running through the budget review process, of course, into the next year. Yeah, that's kind of I guess council has final say, I guess, regardless of what the budget committee might say. But
So we have funds that we would use, but we don't want to go in, they are currently slated for someone working in the cemetery for this fiscal year. But we don't want to go into it with an idea, post a job, and then have to backtrack or post two part-time jobs, and then you guys approve it during budget and we didn't get the person we wanted that could have covered all of it. So the blessing tonight is that
you guys are okay with it, we're going to move forward with posting this job, finding this person, and then also propose it in the budget funded the way Angie's talking about. So that's what we're doing or asking.
Go ahead, Angie.
And back to JR's question about the numbers, I do have it all fleshed out here, and like I said, I did it based on the maximum, just to give us, not to get surprised by anything. But if this person were to work 40 hours a week and were to elect to take the full family benefits with PERS and payroll taxes and all the stuff that's involved in having an employee, the total for that is about $70,000 for the whole year. So that includes everything. So if the cemetery were to pay 25% of that, would be about 18 grand, which would make their contingency about $3 next year. So it would eat up their whole budget, in other words.
Counselor Webb.
Well, I guess the $50 million question is that sustainable out of our general fund budget? Last year, we only set aside $40,000 and nothing in reserves. We did 2 projects with the 40 grand. I mean, if our budget is truly reflective of what we had coming in there, I don't know how you keep funding that. So, I mean, the part-time job thing, I mean, I think that's what we're going to find is it's going to be more of a part-time job. I can't envision this guy, handyman's going to have that much work around our, 3 facilities that we have that we're responsible for.
He would take care of parks, buildings, and everything, not just City Hall.
Also, then his pay would be coming out of parks and works in parks.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. But my thought on that is like the restroom issue right now, where they need painted, and there's always repairs that need to be done. And at the lake, the same thing. It's like Tim doesn't have a lot of time, or maybe that's not his skill set to do that kind of stuff. He spends most of his time, taking care of the landscaping stuff, which he's great at. So this is just, somebody that's going to maintain all city-owned facilities, basically, when it's needed. So it's not going to be fund specific. So yeah, if something needs to be fixed in parks, then they'll get charged to parks for that few hours. But like I said, I really don't see this being a 40-hour week position. And we're not going to try to sell it that way either. But we're just going to sell it that it's more than half time, so that we're hoping to attract somebody with that benefit package. And if, and it doesn't really, whether or not you guys want to go for it is fine. I mean, but we just needed to ask that question about the funding.
Counselor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Since you mentioned to be working a little bit everywhere, I wonder if we could split this up into each area paying a percentage of this. If they're going to help with public works, they're going to help with parks, they're going to help. I mean, someone should kick in 10% here and there if they're going to work on it, unless you want to do the hour paperwork nightmare and try to figure it out later. But
well, that's how I would make them do their timesheet, just like I do public works. They would tell me what department they're working in. But yeah, I mean, I could just spitball it that way, but at the end of the year, then I would want to see those real numbers to see what they actually were doing.
well, the only reason I bring up public works is because if they help out there, that fund seems to have a little bit more available, I should say, maybe for absorbing a little bit of the cost. But that's up to you guys, obviously. But
yeah, my plan was just to try to fund it solely out of the general fund that's in the budget, at least for this first upcoming year. And then we'll get an idea of how much work is required overall, and then how much is able to be farmed out to those other funds. And then mid-year, maybe we look at it and if we need to do a supplement. I really don't think that there's going to be that many hours to parks or water or sewer facilities that would require some huge shift of funding in those funds to cover that. It's just like now when the guys do work at the library or here at City Hall, they put that on their timesheet and I charge it to that fund. So water and sewer don't pay for them to come here and fix the toilet or hang up a shelf or whatever kind of task we have for them. So.
Councilor Williams.
I have a question for Ben. I've always been under the assumption that the funeral home took care of the arrangements at the cemetery. Would this new position be of good benefit to you and give you more time to do other important things?
Yeah, it would. It's 95% of people are cremated in Oregon now. And going through a funeral home is expensive and having them coordinated. They don't, I very rarely have a funeral director that I coordinate in a cremation burial with. It's the family that comes out here and directs us or contacts me and I work with directly. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that would have been unheard of. But they just come here. And sometimes they wait years. And a lot of our income, we were doing really good there for a couple of years, and it was people coming in and burying remains of people who had died sometime before. And I think that's why we've financially struggled. But no, I unless it's a casket burial, we don't. It's mostly working with the general public.
Thank you.
That's who we work with out there.
Councilor Webb.
So has this passed through the cemetery committee?
No, we wouldn't pass something like that through them.
Okay.
They would have the right to have a representative sit on the interview panel as committee. They pick someone to sit in on the interviews. But yeah, we don't typically pass, because the same work that would be slated to get done there would be getting done by this person, even if they're a dual job person. So the work that we're requiring at the cemetery wouldn't be changing.
Okay, and then a follow-up on that. I would be remiss, having gone through this once before, for my former council members. When we went through this, we felt this was a little bit of a blindside. I think what we came out at the time before, we were hoping more for a collaborative when we were going to add positions into staffing, that we were given more of a heads up and more collaborative effort on that. I'm just want to put that for the record that I think that was the feeling last time, and I feel that way a little bit tonight. That I know we've had this discussion. It's your discretion as the administrator to do so, but to add positions.
This is the collaborating, is that we're not just hiring this person, we're actually talking ahead of even posting a job.
Because if kind of that funding model isn't something that council is looking forward to, I mean, we're not going to go that direction. That would be silly to hire somebody and then turn around in 3 months during the budget process and then say, oh, well, sorry, yeah, we don't have a job for you anymore.
Stephanie.
So I think I can speak to Dale's concern. I did give a heads up to the cemetery committee when I was at their meeting on Thursday. So they are aware of this at the very top level, not super in depth, but they are aware.
aware that
But
we
you
were.
were speaking from council's perspective, right, Dale?
Yeah, because you remember we went through this before. I think it was when you hired the parks person, made them a full-time position and from part-time and council just didn't, they just didn't see that coming. I mean, I don't know if too many of us disagree with the outcome, but yeah,
The only thing I would say to it is we can go with a part-time caretaker. The tricky part is we're paying fully loaded public works when we're trying to do these little honeydews. And to me, that doesn't seem like a legitimate use of someone with the skill set, like for water and sewer treatment, to be coming here, going to the library and moving big shelves for Shannon. That doesn't seem legitimate. So that's why we were trying to come up with something in a position that would be not a fully loaded, skilled public works person, but skilled in their own way, maybe starting at a lesser wage to do these things. We can keep doing it the way we're doing it. It's not a very good use of the money, I don't feel.
well, see, and that's the better selling point that I think for myself, and maybe I can't speak for the fellow counselors, that we need to see that what the trade-offs are here. I mean, and like you say, you're paying somebody that's so fully loaded in public works to be doing work maybe they're not even familiar doing. But then again, I asked, what was the hours that we've spent? We should be tracking that, and you know, you should have been giving us, yeah, they spend 100 hours a year in here doing stuff, or 200 hours, or so we understand how much workload there is. Again, if it's too part-time for somebody, that even with the benefits, I mean, we can argue that all night, who you're going to get. And, you need some skilled old retired guy that just wants a part-time job, but can run a lawnmower and has other skills. Maybe that's out there. Um, but again, a little, that more of that discussion. I mean, the sustainability of it. I mean, that's the last thing I want to do, because it sounds like you're ready to put the job description out now and pay out of the current budget. We have enough money in the cemetery funds. I'm thinking that's what I'm hearing, to cover into the next year, and we get to the budget discussion. But again, without knowing our financial situation totally, if it's $50,000 a year, even is that sustainable out of the general fund? What I saw out of the general fund last year, the answer would have been no. Well, take that back, because we were paying this, but that was coming out of cemetery funds, which we can't recognize. That's not going to continue to happen. We'll just be out of funds. So, I mean, a presentation, a little more fill in the blanks for us here. There's a little bit of a leap of faith here. Okay, I've said my.
I'm game for your critique on the presentation. I would have loved to hear on Saturday a text from you that said, I want to know how many hours this handyman's working in general fund currently, because we could have got that kind of background. You guys need to, if you have questions and you want, that will help us present you with what you really want to hear or see too. Give us a heads up you wanted that info, Dale.
I'll have to mention I did pick up my packet on Friday on my way to Eastern Oregon. So we were supposed to be out on Wednesdays, but we know that's not possible all the time either.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Angie.
So just to reiterate, Dale, we weren't asking permission to hire a maintenance guy. We were asking if you guys were okay with us paying for the cemetery person out of the general fund. Because regardless, if we take the maintenance part and chuck it, we still have to pay for that cemetery maintenance, and the cemetery can't afford it. So that's the big money question there.
Okay, with that being said, from Angie, are we ready to go ahead and get a general consensus from the council to have staff post this new position? Council, if you're in favor of it, give me a thumbs up.
Question. It sounded to me like Angie was asking if it was okay for it to come out of the general fund and not to post the position. Am I correct, Angie?
Yeah, we're looking to know if you guys are going to be okay with us, with the general fund paying for the cemetery maintenance.
I'm in favor of that.
I thought I heard Josette say that we're looking for general consensus for a new job posting for the maintenance and caretaker
We
position.
don't want to post it if you're not going to let us, if you're not going to be okay with us paying for it out of the general fund.
I understand now. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement.
I'm in agreement.
So
JR has a question.
JR,
I'm just curious what would happen to the cemetery funds if zero monies was coming out toward the care of it?
But we would still pay for the operational materials and stuff like that out of that fund. It would just be the labor that wouldn't come out of there. So like for next year's budget, that would mean there'd be about $19,000 sitting in their contingency, but that's only because we had to transfer $10,000 out of the maintenance fund this year. So if you take that away, they've got 11 grand that they get to carry forward, and that's going to cover their whole budget. And then once you deplete some of that for your operations and, you know, maintaining the grounds up there, it's just going to keep chipping away until we can start, until things start moving up there and we sell some of those plots.
Didn't we have some of that money left from the sale of the house that was in that fund?
Yeah, it's in the reserve fund.
Okay.
So our goal, because that was one of the big concerns from council in the past, was having that fill in the maintenance labor costs will just deplete it, like has happened every time the cemetery had any amount of money. And so that's a little bit more why we were not going towards that reserve money and touching it at all. We wanted to fund it differently in the hopes that sales of the columbarium spots, burials come back online when people can gather because they're not under COVID restriction anymore. Well, we start to bring in money that we haven't seen because we've had a weird year, and not deplete that reserve that could be for the next columbarium. It could be for other improvements to the cemetery you'll never have the money again to do. It's kind of why we didn't even want to touch it.
Councilor Williams.
My fear is that if we do not maintain that cemetery in an excellent way, the little business that we do have, we could lose if somebody goes up there and they look at the cemetery and it doesn't look good. So I think it's one of those things the city might have to bite the bullet and do what has to be done to keep it as nice as it can possibly be. And I think that requires taking that money out of the general fund, whether we like it or not.
Go ahead, Ben.
And
Go ahead, Ben.
more than just this one time, this is also kind of a long-term thing that has always come up. I don't want to put words in Mr. McNair's mouth or anything, but the cemetery is unstable. And like it says in the staff report, the intention is not to fund it out of the cemetery. It's just to make the cemetery caretaker job stable and something that we can attract a good person, and it isn't going to be where we get somebody good on and then don't have the money and so you don't have a job. Part of this is the long-term stability of that position, and there are going to be years where it's going to completely pay for itself and maybe even have some extra to kick back, and there's going to be other years where it needs some help. But part of this, when we're looking at this long-term beyond this job or this budget or the next budget, is stabilization and getting a good person that we can rely on, you know, for 15 years, 10 years, whatever, to care for the cemetery and be able to do things. I just got Tom trained up on doing internments and stuff, and then he moved on, you know. I mean, I don't want to keep finding a good person that can be the good caretaker and do those extra duties and just have them move on because the job is unstable. And I don't think the community wants that either. But that's just a little extra perspective.
Thank you, Ben. Councilor Webb.
Well, Councilor Williams is correct. You know, it is all of the city's responsibility to maintain that cemetery, and general fund money, that is a good purpose for it. So yeah, I can't argue that point. I think that's appropriate. It's just the same thing as using that money to pave the street or anything else. So, so anyhow, I think I'm okay with coming out of the general fund.
Thank you, Councilor Webb. So we have 2 councilors so far that are agreeing to use the general fund to fund the caretakers for the cemetery. Other 2 councilors want to voice their opinion?
Yeah, I'm good with it also, Mayor. I'm a big supporter of taking care of our cemetery. So it's obvious that fund wasn't going to cut it. We'd be cycling through people every other spring. And the city has taken over that cemetery, even though we had volunteers that did it before and lived in that old house. But times are changing. It's time to move on, I guess. It's going to cost us more. So I hope we do find somebody good. And you can't, you know, if you pay peanuts, you're going to get a monkey every time. So the cost of 65 or 70,000 a year, it's a cost of doing business and the pride in your town. I hope this person has some time to water some flowers. So I'm good with it.
Councilor Potter?
I'm good with it.
Okay. Well, it looks like we have a general consensus to go ahead and fund the caretaker position upcoming out of the general fund. So thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie.
With that being said, we'll move right into winter averages for sewer consumption, billing, and since Ben's still here, I'll turn it over to you, Ben, for general knowledge.
Well, it's pretty straightforward. I don't think there's any surprises there. They, like I mentioned in the staff report, just because of this kind of silly circumstances, we didn't get to have a little presentation during a workshop with the new council. Certainly, Councilor Webb is very familiar with that. I believe Councilor Allen and Mayor Hobart understood and got on board with how all that worked. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Who was the closest estimate for annual usage increase?
That Cassandra was 10 gallons a month off. So she ended up with the closest.
I was within 100 gallons.
So,
Counselor Allen.
thank you, Mayor. So Ben, it looks like we had usage went up to about 4,900 gallons or something instead of 4,600. Is that correct from my
That is
memory?
correct.
So is that the COVID factor that we're all kind of thinking, more people home, working from home, being home?
Well, that's one of it. Actually, Mayor Hobart and I were trying to come up with various reasons for that when he was in the office, and we talked about it.
Hold on.
But that is also includes the restaurants. That's all 3/4 inch meters. So they certainly had a reduction in water this year. So a couple hundred gallons. I'm not sure what to attribute that to, but I would imagine people working from home was probably part of that as well. More people working from home certainly would trump the restaurants having lower consumption. The one thing that I'd kind of like to say is that you notice that the national average is quite a bit higher per household. And when we first started probably 6 years ago now, looking at the rate structure and getting our current rate setting procedure in, the federal government reported it at 9,000 gallons per household per month. And they attribute the decrease, and it continues to go down, is that local governments and state governments require low flow fixtures, and that also people are just more conscious of water usage and conserving their resources. And I think it's pretty amazing that Vernonia, with a very clean water supply and ample water minus one dry month or so a year, has always been ahead of the game. And I think that's something that, nobody in town knows, but I think as a community, we can be proud of that despite having ample clean water, which most people in the US don't have, we're still ahead of the game on consumption. So.
Yeah, my point on that, Ben, was if we get into, I don't know, there's probably not a lot of money on the extra few hundred gallons, but I just wonder if it would come into play on rate review. If we're going to go back to the 4,600 or try to stick with the 4,900 for projections.
Well, so the 4,900, it will go into effect for people that didn't have a water winter average beginning with next month, and that will carry over for them until they do have a winter average. When we calculate the bill, we put in the total billed gallons in millions of gallons by the entire system, not just the 3/4 inch meters, and that consumption is higher this year. So as far as like impacting the rate, depending, of course, it's all budget dependent, but if the budget was to stay the same, the consumptive rate would go down some amount. I don't know if it would be 5 cents or 10 cents, but with higher consumption across the system, we do potentially get lower rates on the consumptive part of water.
Right, and that's my fear, that we come out heavy on that and then we lower it, and then the next year people are back to work and they use a lot less water, and then we're back to, might have to bump it back up, right?
Yeah, and so that's the little, that is the subjective part of the rate review and looking at it. We look at what we did last year and its numbers. We look at this year, And that ultimately is up to council. If it's a 5 cent rate drop per 1,000 gallons, maybe council's just like, well, let's just keep that level so we're not causing people's rates to go up and down. That has a much larger impact on the base side of it, as far as rates going up and down and keeping rates stable. You know, we've seen a lot of growth, and depending on what the budget is, you could end up seeing a larger drop in the base rate than in consumption, and that's up to council is whether you want to kind of maintain that, or do you want to subject your ratepayers to fluctuation over years, especially with, we did that kind of last year because we weren't kind of sure what was happening with COVID. And I don't know that we're completely clear of this new situation or the situation we find ourselves in. So those will be some of the subtleties that you guys will have to take into effect after you set a budget and we do the rate review, for sure. So it's, you know, that's a ways off, but it's not, there's nothing wrong with kind of thinking those scenarios, you know, through our heads or asking questions about that stuff now, so we can be really informed when that time comes, for sure.
Thanks for your insight.
Any other, Councilor Webb?
I'm going to throw you all for a loop. This wintertime average is what you will pay for your sewer consumption for each month for the rest of the year. So it's a little convoluted. We're talking water, but we're billing you for sewer on this one. So, and
That's
you know,
why-
a couple hundred gallons, it's not going to be a big deal, I don't think, for the rates. So we'll see what the calculator spits out when we get to there.
And I do recommend, I know that Dale goes and checks it regularly. I don't always get it updated every month, but there is a link to the utility rates Vernonia-or.gov. Explains how our rates work in pretty simple terms, but there also is the rate performance and past year's rate performance. And you can, usually I get it updated every month, but you can see where trends are going, and as far as consumption and how many meter multipliers and you know, things like that. So there's some, if you're into data and looking at charts and trends, there's some pretty good, now that we're 3 or 4 years into that project of tracking those metrics, it's really starting to have be insightful, and I think will be important for future councils when making decisions about rates and so forth.
Go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, and I just want to back Ben on that, because being intimately part of all this process over the years, if you go back a few years and look at the graphics and see how far the lines were apart, and then you go over the years and see how the lines of our projection versus our actual revenue, you know, our goal is when we do the budget and we do the revenue projections and we do our rates, we want to see those lines coming right together. We want to hit that number at the end. We hit a little above because of we don't project the growth into it. A couple of inflationary factors that way, but it's been so much better over time. I mean, staff has got to have tremendous faith in our process now, because you know we don't have a big oops year, you know, and they're like, oh, scratching our heads, what happened, you know. Pretty now it's just a given. We go through the process, we're going to make that amount of revenue unless there's some major economic disruption, which nobody could account for. So no, I truly go to that page and look at those graphs, and yeah, I look on them every month. So good job, Ben.
Any other discussion or questions? Well, thank you, Ben, for all the information presented tonight, and good job.
Yep. You're welcome, Mayor Hobart. Everybody have a great night.
Good night,
Thank you,
Ben.
Ben.
Good night.
We'll move right on to Travel Oregon Competitive and Recovery Grants. Josette.
So, she just can't help volunteering, but following our meeting, our work session meeting, Donna Webb shot me an email that said, hey, there's this grant out there. So I attached to your guys' packet the kind of brochure, so to speak, of the pages of what they are allowing. So the grant opportunity opened today. It will close on the 31st at 5 p.m. And then you will find out via email by the 30th of April whether or not you're funded. So just in taking from your guys' downtown beautification discussion, some things that staff was proposing we maybe apply for because they're kind of directly outlined in the brochure. One was garbage or waste receptacles. I think you could tie that into COVID because that's part of what this grant is a recovery kind of element for COVID and having appropriate places to dispose of debris or anything kind of contaminated or people touching everything or wipes or whatever, masks, who knows what they're going to throw in the garbage. So that was one of the items. And then as far as the Main Street business beautification part of the brochure, we know there's drip lines in the poles that could be beneficial if you guys choose to go with the hanging baskets, which it seems like a lot of people like and could be really beautiful. That drip line system has not been used in years. So we would be proposing a rehabbing and updating of that system, going in, either pulling new lines. I'm sure the lines are probably brittle by now, sitting in a hot black light pole in the summer and a freezing cold light pole in the winter. It's probably got some leaks. But we'd be proposing fixing those. And then the other thing we were going to propose for the beautification is maybe installing the remaining light poles that don't have the electrical capability with an outlet, so that if it were to be that downtown needed to be decorated for different holidays, could be the Christmas season, could be 4th of July, that you do red, white, and blue all the way down the main drag and really do Independence Day up, or Salmon Festival, we could put fall colors on the light poles. So those were the three things we came up for, and in my staff report I asked for you guys to come up with any other elements you thought fit the criteria that was listed in the brochure that would be kind of downtown-wide amenities. So, and then I wanted to know if you would approve me applying for the grant, because it takes staff time to get this kind of together and document the different problem areas, which I think Councilor Allen's got some great photos of our problem areas with waste receptacles. So, do you guys have anything to add in as a it would probably be like at the end of this discussion that you're approving, we apply for the grant with A, B, C, and D as the elements we're going for. So some sort of consensus on what elements you all agree on.
Councilor Allen, you're still muted.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Josette, on this, I went through and looked at this a couple of days ago, but it's got different sections. Like the first one here, or one of them's outdoor recreation. Do you have to pick from these categories, or can you pick one from each one, or?
Well, so how I understand it, when it there's a printout that I did today that was print out the questions they're going to actually ask you in the application.
Right.
And it said project category, so you pick one. And so we're going to be Business District Main Street, right? I
Okay.
thought that the benefits that are in, because they have the outdoor receptacles as, let me get there. They have it as they have the outdoor receptacles as outdoor. But one of the things I was going to say is to me, it's a cleanup and beautification in a business district. So we're going to go under number 2 with all of our asks, right? But include the waste management because it's cleanup / beautification.
What about
you have to pick. Go ahead.
So we're going to stick with number 2, which is Business District and Main Street, right?
Yes.
So how are you going to, don't answer yet, but one, how are you going to estimate the cost of some of this? And another one was, are we going to include the brackets for the flower baskets, for the light poles, the cost of that kind of stuff, or?
So we could easily add that in. So in this application, it also says, describe the project for which funding is requested, detail how it could be related to COVID. So that was going to be my downtown garbage beautification. Then it also says, how does your proposed project advance your destination in welcoming visitors, welcoming locals, supporting or having people of very varied abilities. So there's just different things you can hit with all of it. So my way of estimating is I know how much the material will cost for each garbage can. I'm getting an estimate on someone constructing them. We could always construct them on our own, but hey, if you don't shoot for the moon, you might not get there. So let's put a cost for someone to construct them. We can easily put in the estimate for the drip line because I have schematics for how that went in the poles, so I could easily get somebody to bid that pretty quickly. Just say, what would you charge me to go outfit this? And then we could add the flower baskets and the beautification. That'd just be an estimate of looking up a few options and proposing that the highest cost one would be what we get, so we're covering our bases.
And then,
yes, whatever you guys want me to try and fit in here, we'll try and make a case for it.
well, I think the portable trees that you've included would probably be a good thing to maybe throw in there just for cost. And lost my train of thought. Sorry, I had something else I was going to say. Oh, one more thing I wanted council to know was they do have some synthetic flowers that I guess are pretty darn nice now. So if it gets to be too much of a hassle for the watering or cost prohibited, they do have some fake flowers that I guess are pretty darn hard to tell the difference. So that's just something I wanted to let everybody know.
Thank you, Counselor Allen. Counselor Williams had his hand up first.
Can this money be used for materials and labor?
Yeah, so you would pitch what project the different elements of your project, and then that would be in your ask, in your budgeted ask. And what's not in this brochure is the pages I printed out for what your application looks like. And then also they have a budget form where you have to outline what's label or what's materials, what's permitting, anything you need. They kind of lay it out like that on their budget form.
Thank you.
Counselor Webb.
So is there any way we ask for some of that paver releveling money? Can we tie that in there? There's timers on those water systems. They're probably defunct by now too. We might want to make sure we have those in there. I
Yeah.
know when we had those, they were really having some control issues, and I don't know. I didn't stick my nose in there deep enough to know why. I mean, but I've had the
Okay.
same system around my house, and water and flower baskets hanging around the perimeter of my porch. And, it's not that hard. So, some reason we were having, remember we had water running down the street and all that problem. And so, yeah, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Um, and I don't want to stack too much into this because, Josette's opinion on this, uh, we can ask for 100,000, but I bet you don't want to ask for the full amount. I think you probably want
No,
to ask
I'm thinking,
something, Donna and I were talking today. You probably want to ask for about half. Then you might be,
right, or even if it's 35 or whatever, yeah. I think you
yeah,
have a way better chance of getting funded.
yeah. If you ask for the whole amount, I bet you they're going to look at the lessers to get more numbers, more people
Yeah.
covered with money. So, and that's why I won't ask for this one. That's just looking at the number one, and they talk about uh, water recreation, and this is something else council's going to have to wrestle with. I haven't went down and looked, but drift boat access into the Nehalem just still isn't a very clean situation down there. Some of them are putting in at Anderson Park at the junction there, and kind of tears things up. We've got a situation, where we get so much silt when we get the floodwaters in there. You can't go putting rock in there and then you just cover it up. But something just occurred to me, and I've been seeing a couple of people. In fact, Angie's one of them. They pour the concrete strips in, and then that would be something that then we could take the front end loader and just scrape them clean after a floodwater, and then we'd have those concrete strips that we could have access on. So I don't know if we want to add this into this, but it'd be interesting to see where you end up with your money wise. Um, but I think with what we're going to ask, the garbage cans and the water system, and if we do put some paver money in there, that's probably about all we're going to want to ask for.
Counselor Potter.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Allen.
Yeah, Josette, could you include black two-tiered fancy water drinking fountain?
Oh, yeah, okay.
So we have
The
about,
two-tiered would really get you for the varied abilities.
And then another thing I thought of, if you want to sell those garbage cans and it's pertaining to COVID, you tell them you're going to be attaching a hand sanitizer station on each one with paper and whatever, they can wipe their hands and throw it in the trash can. They'll probably eat that up.
And even if you just mounted them during the COVID time, and then if we're out of that type of thing, you could build it so you don't have to ruin it to get it off if that's no longer an issue.
So it might be something to think of, kind of call it a COVID station trash can combo.
Yeah.
so Josette, what do you have listed now for your grant
So I
application?
have the 3 items that I talked to in the report: garbage cans, watering drip line. What else did I say? My brain's like all over the place here.
The portable trees.
No, hold on. What I said. I've got to go back here. Oh, electrical outlets. Sorry. I knew it was something. So timer, drip line, electrical outlets, garbage cans, portable trees or the planters with an evergreen, the 2-tiered drinking fountain, and add the hand sanitizer to the garbage can idea.
I wonder if they let
I
you
don't
put the
know about-
lights on.
Oh, go ahead. What?
Remember we talked briefly Friday about standardizing the lights on each pole or whatever that, you know, the city has the lights and we put them up every winter. Would they go for that as part of the beautification?
You mean the actual light units?
Yeah,
Or
whatever goes on the poles, you know, I don't know.
I don't know that they would unless they were like affixed all the time.
Mm.
Because these are going to be something we unplug and pack up and then pull out and put up, right? So if it was like a unit that was beautifying it all the time, I think we could probably sell it. The other thing I was thinking about Councilor Webb's waterway thing is I've had that discussion of the concrete or gravel runners with ODF and W and getting ORWEB money to do it at Anderson Park. So if we go forward with Springboard and get their juvenile fish barriers removed, I think we'd have a pretty good case to say, look, we went ahead of you and did these other things. You can help us out with that runner idea. I also have a teeny bit of concern about putting the pavers in because I don't know that every area needs the reset. So I don't know exactly how to do that, and Jeff's already got it scheduled to happen this. I mean, I could measure the square footage of sunken ones and use it as a safety kind of for trip hazard and visitors to, you know. So let me look into that and see what I can come up with. If that's something you guys all want to reset kind of sunken areas on the walkway or something.
I noticed in front of True Value the other day, Jill's, that those pavers are really sunk down. In fact, they're down about an inch or so. It's very easy to walk off the sidewalk and probably trip on the curb if you're not careful.
Well, it's weird at True Value, it's like a hump. It's like low next to the sidewalk, high in the middle, and low next to the curb. I don't know what causes that unless it's just water or something. I don't know. It's weird. There are going to be a few spots, like JR and I walked downtown and did a little looking around. There are a few spots where the sidewalk's higher than the curb, or there's an in-ground water meter box that you're probably not going to be able to reset. So there may be some places where you can't get it perfectly flat because of the existing kind of components, but we could measure some square footage of resetting and see what we put that in as a safety thing for people with different abilities. We don't want to have safety problems.
Yeah.
What about painting of the curb? Sorry.
So that
Councilor-
one, I think they'll probably push back on only because it's done annually by us. It's not a new or improvement. It's kind of what we always do. And then some of the people in town are very specific that they would like to do their own, and they do not want our help or any volunteers' help because they don't like how people get it just on, like, a little bit on the sidewalk, a little bit on the road. Or some people are very persnickety about that.
Councilor Williams.
Well, I just remembered from setting bricks myself that it's a common mistake to screed it perfectly. And if you don't leave just a little bit of a crown, and if you don't leave it just a tad bit high, it's going to settle no matter what you do. If you just leave it a little crown and a little high, it will go down flat with use, and it won't get that sunken look.
Yeah.
Okay, do we just need a general consensus from council to move forward, or do you want a motion tonight, Stephanie? You're on mute, Steph.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll ask for a motion. Would any council member like to make a motion to proceed with the grant application?
So can I say something real quick, Mayor?
Go ahead.
So if you guys are all together on this, we'd want someone to authorize me to apply for the grant and then the listed items.
Okay.
You want me to list the items so someone knows them, or does someone have them?
Councilor Williams.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the proposition of getting this grant with the items that Josette has listed out.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Webb seconded. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Potter,
Aye.
Counselor Allen,
Aye.
Counselor Webb,
All right.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Counselor Williams,
All right.
motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Stephanie, I'll get you the list of items.
Yeah, can you just state those lists? Can you state those items for us, Josette, for the record?
Sure. So, strip line system in the light poles, electrical outlets in the remaining light poles, 2-tier drinking fountain, new garbage can receptacle shelves with potential COVID hand sanitizer stations on every other one or something. Portable trees for the winter season, and paver work on the sunken square footage or square footage that needs addressing for safety.
Thank you, Josette. Now, do we need to determine a dollar amount? No.
No, because I'll just price all this stuff out, and then that's what we'll ask for. But I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the 100.
Okay. Okay, thank you, staff.
Thank you, Donna Webb, for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, thanks, Donna.
Very much so.
I'll pass that on to her.
Thank you, Dale. Business from the department. Police department update.
Hello, you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
All
Hi,
right,
Chief.
the first page of my report there is for February. Last month, it was a pretty quiet month, only 131 calls for service. Code enforcement numbers are starting to come up. I only had a brief part of March. Obviously, March isn't over yet, but it is the season, so those numbers will start climbing. The Handle with Care program is back in your packet with the MOU. I'm requesting authorization to sign that. I did run that by legal, and he said it's not a great MOU, but there's no harm in signing it. Also attached is a draft policy for that MOU, or for that program. And if approved, I'll get that implemented, and then we'll have a brief training on how it works and how it works within a department and how we forward the information. Not listed on my report, I wanted to let you guys know that the police department will be offering boat inspections 3 days next month. Hopefully we'll probably be getting that advertised, and we'll maybe bring some extra people into the city. That was all I had.
Councilor Williams.
These numbers do not reflect what the Highway Patrol does. Is that correct?
No, no.
Thank you.
If you're interested in those numbers, I could probably get them, but it would take a little time.
It'd be kind of nice to see what they do in contrast to what you guys provide. Yeah.
Sure,
Thank you.
I'll see what I can come up with. It's probably a request I have to make through the state to get those numbers.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do.
Okay.
Councilor Allen.
You're muted, buddy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for hanging in here with us tonight. I did read your material. I don't have an issue with anything on there. I did have a question on the amount of code enforcement started versus code enforcement cleared. It seems like it's very low.
Yeah, some of them are kind of in limbo. Some of them might have gotten a little bit of extra time to get things done. I know she's been working with some individuals on trying assistance in cleaning up. So those will make those numbers high for a little while, and then they should level out.
You're kind of fading in now, but could you give us kind of the steps on what happens when someone gets a violation and what you can do about it as far as warnings and how much time?
Chief, I can speak
Generally,
to that if you want.
Okay, yeah, if you want to, go for it.
So the main goal of code enforcement is compliance. We typically give someone 2 weeks to remedy it. If it's a big project, they can potentially fill out a corrective action plan, which gives them up to 90 days to fix the problem. And then 2 of the ones we have on there are fires that happened. And I know that one of those homeowners is having issues and did sign a corrective action plan. So they have another 90 days to figure it out. We just ask that they secure the building and remove any burnt debris that's outside, but the goal isn't to kind of hound people or make them financially unstable to get them to comply with code. So that's why some of them have a little bit longer, because if we held everyone to the 2 weeks or you get a $500 ticket, I think you guys would have a lot of topics from the floor.
Well, and just to add to that a little bit, we prefer not to have these go to court, because once we start that process, generally court can be anywhere from 2 weeks to a month away before you end up in court. And then once they do end up in court, then usually they end up getting a corrective action plan anyway that gives them additional time that could be 30 to 90 days. And it just takes that much longer to get things cleaned up.
Councilor Williams.
I have a couple of questions. Under traffic stop, how does that relate to number of tickets issued? And also, I go up to the cemetery almost every day to read my Bible, and I find needles up there and all kinds of weird stuff. I'm kind of curious as to what the city's doing about monitoring traffic up there at the cemetery. I'm thinking at night maybe. And the first question, what's the difference between number of tickets issued versus stops?
Yeah, the citation portion of that is not reported on there. Those are just traffic stops. If you would like to get the number of citations issued, we can do that. That's usually reported in our crime blotter, but not necessarily in this report.
It just seemed like that wasn't very many stops. It's like one every other day.
Yeah, sometimes we have spurts where there's a whole bunch, and then we have days that there's absolutely nothing, or there's something, we're just not catching them.
Okay.
And as far as the needles and stuff, when you guys find that stuff, call that in. I don't recall having any reports of anything at the cemetery recently. I know the guys go up there several times during their shifts, off and on. I know at one point when we started having issues, we started closing the gate every night, and then we haven't been doing that for a while.
Well, when I find him up there, I tell Ben about him, and he goes up and gets him because I don't want to really mess with him. But when I see him, it concerns me.
Yeah, for sure, and should. And just call that stuff in. We'll gladly come pick that stuff up for you. Although there's not, unless we catch somebody with it, there's not a lot we're going to be able to do with it.
Right.
But I would prefer us handle them than somebody else.
Right. Thank you.
So if you just call here, Grant, we'll send somebody up, or the non-emergency number.
Okay.
That helps us document too.
Right. Yeah, that's why I've been telling Ben.
Chief, are you going to stay with us to talk about the childhood trauma resolution?
Sure, I can hang out if you have questions.
Or, I just got one question when we get to it, but I don't want to keep you.
Oh, no worries.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for the chief? Well, thank you, Chief, for your report. Thanks for the job well done you're doing in the city and your crew.
Thank you.
Ordinances and resolutions. Resolution number 2021-04. A resolution adopting a new personal policy handbook. Found on page 32.
So you guys received the new handbook in the email, but not in your packet. Did you have a chance to look that over?
Yeah, I read about 18 pages of it, but I'm not sure what was added to this new resolution or not, but I read most of it.
I have my notes here, Josette, if you want me to speak to it.
Go for it.
Okay. So we really didn't change a whole lot on, if you guys want to go back and look, but on page 7, and it's always been in here where non-exempt employees would receive comp time in lieu of overtime. We took all of that out. Now they just get paid overtime when they work overtime. It just became, in years past, it was just a nightmare to keep track of, and some people had a lot accumulated. And so anyway, we just took all that out. Exempt employees, those of us on salary, are tasked with our own, keeping track of our own overage, like, for this meeting tonight, then it's up to us to take that time off within the next pay period or whatever to come up with that. So that was on page 7. The next change was on page 9, and all I did there was we added just a little bit of language under the meals section for employees that are oh my goodness, attending trainings or meetings offsite or whatever where they get per diem for meals. So we just put a little bit of language in there that allows them to request it ahead of time if they, financially can't foot the bill. Typically, you spend it and then you bring me the receipts when you get back from your trip or whatever. But we just added a little blurb in there about that. And then on page 12, I just changed the hours, the vacation hours that are allowed to roll over year to year were set at 260. I upped it to 280 just so that it's an even number of weeks rather than a partial week in there. It's really not, it was 20 hours, it's not a big deal. And then there was some just language cleanup, grammar, old language that didn't need to be in here anymore. And then the other change was on page 25. We remove the language that said that disability insurance is available for purchase by the employee through the city's carrier. That is not true. The only short-term disability that we offer is through Aflac. So I just added that terminology in there, and that was it. We sent it off to Ruben. He read through it all to make sure that it's all legal and everything's good.
Any questions? Discussions? Counselor Allen?
Yeah, Angie, I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was 280 hours to 260, or did I get my packets mixed up?
No, it was it used to be 260, and now it's 280.
Oh, I guess I had that. And then there was one section, gosh, I got so many papers in front of me, it's hard, but there was one section where it talked about, was it the comp time that got deleted or added in there?
I deleted it for non-exempt employees. Because before the city never paid overtime. They just refused to pay overtime, and people had to accrue comp time. And then what was happening is they would accrue it in 2015 and then want to cash it out in 2020, and then we're paying it out at a higher rate in most cases. And also it's just a messier way, and it's harder on the budget because then you're carrying this comp time where, and like for those of us on salary, if we don't use it, we don't get to come back at some point and demand that we get paid for it. But where the hourly employees, the way it was accruing, they could do that. It's, we couldn't deny them that. So it's just a lot easier to pay them the 1 or 2 hours of overtime here and there that they get. And it's almost always just the public works guys, so.
Okay, then on page 20 of the second paragraph up, on your 2021 version here, it says if an employee on approved FMLA. Are you caught up with me?
Page 20.
20.
Where are you at? Yeah.
Second paragraph from the bottom.
Okay.
Right below benefits while on leave. If you read that, to me, it sounds like it says one thing and then says another thing in the next sentence, like opposite. Am I reading that wrong? Where you get the health insurance included if you're hurt, but then you can buy it? I'm not quite understanding.
My numbers must not jive with your numbers.
Says
page
if an
26 of the document.
Oh, well, I'm looking at my numbered pages on my document.
Oh.
In the actual PDF.
Not in the PDF because I needed my track changes. So it's 15. 15 on the Word document. Yeah, is it the FMLA section, JR?
Yeah, right below benefits while on leave is the bulletin. And I read it, and it kind of jumped out at me like that's saying the opposite thing in the same two sentences.
I'm not seeing it.
Want me to read it to you?
Well, tell us what's above it. Go. Oh, I found it. Okay. So you're talking about that particular paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay. Employees should maintain us, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, we'll continue to provide them that health coverage, but they have to pay for it because they're not receiving a paycheck. They have to pay their portion, not the whole thing.
Okay, because that's what it says here. It's going to continue with the employee's health care, and then it talks about will be responsible for bearing the cost. Are you talking to just the 15%?
Well, this here, let's see. Trying to remember.
That's how we did it when we had. We had to pay the 15.
Yeah, we had someone on leave and you had to cover your cost of the premium that comes out of your paycheck that you're not getting. from me, so it has to be paid somehow.
Okay, maybe.
Usually they use their, like, they would use their supplemental, like Aflac or whatever to pay for that. Yeah, I see what you mean about the wording though. This is just, most of this is is from our carrier. It's just a boilerplate. So,
Then on my packet on page 18, it looked like you pulled out all the proof that you need to get from a doctor if you're actually on one of these programs where you're away from work. As far as taking care of your mother or your sister or a sick kid.
But that's all under the
anything
FMLA. That's its own.
Yeah, I didn't change any of that.
Those are all their own requirements. If someone fills out the form, then all those requirements kick in.
It did change because I went through both packets.
I didn't change it.
Oh, well, the language, I had them on two split
CIS
screens,
there.
reading 2016 and reading this one, there was different language, so. It was like they pulled out all the requirement to bring a note from the doctor within 15 days, unless they rearranged it somewhere in there that I didn't see, but.
No, but that's what I'm saying. When you say I'm going out under FMLA or OFLA, you fill out a piece of paper. All of those requirements are held in that packet from the FMLA or OFLA application. They don't have to be in ours in addition, because just in filling that out, then triggers those requirements. Because the Medical Leave Act has those requirements in the Medical Leave Act. So that's probably why when CIS had us use their new format, they didn't also double up and put the requirement in there. If that makes sense. Because those are acts that are formal Oregon law that you have to follow.
Right. I was reading in here where we don't have to actually follow a couple of these things, and I'm just wondering what impact that's had on our budget and to people time away by go ahead and granting these benefits.
We've only had, well, there's no strain on the budget, because if they're gone, we're not paying them.
Well, I mean, the strain is, I guess you lose people for weeks and weeks or whatever, right?
But yeah, I mean, we could be that kind of employer that just says, too bad you're fired, but that doesn't look too good.
Well, and we're just under by like 4 positions,
right now we're only under by 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason not to pull it out, because ultimately we could be above it, and then you're back readdressing the whole thing to put it back in.
I guess it would have been helpful to have something redlined for some of us. I spent quite a bit of time trying to read 80 pages of this and figure it out, but anyway.
Yeah, the tricky part is the version from 2018 was ours, and the format and version was not ours. So it wasn't like apples to apples. So we could have sent you our version with the stuff stricken out.
Right. Well, I did get through 90% of it or more, but it was a lot of reading. I guess I know the packet probably better than half of the people out there floating around. So as far as the rules, looks like there's a lot of rules that I don't know who could follow every one of them. But there's a lot of mays and should, and we can and if we want in there, I guess. So a little bit, it looks like there's quite a bit of discretion for our city administrator to apply some, hopefully, practicality to some of that stuff.
Yeah, we're kind of a three-legged stool, right? We're a business, we're an employer, we're a service. So the goal is to not cut one of the legs too short in any of those.
So how does some of the handbook apply to us elected officials, Josette, that are not paid? Like in the page 2, I think, talked about, I understand about the bullying part and sex discrimination factors.
Yeah, so the policies around kind of the discrimination or harassment policies, those are everybody, employees, elected, even Ruben can't do it, or the engineer has to follow it as an agent of the city. So those are really the ones that, and then I guess to some extent the non-retaliation, if a staff member, even if they said something bad that wasn't a disciplinary action, we couldn't retaliate, or council couldn't retaliate against that person, hopefully. So that's really where it kind of covers you guys. But then that's also in just kind of the rules you have in the charter. There's all that kind of language around being upstanding.
Understand. Any other discussions or questions? Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt resolution adopting a new personal policy handbook? Councilor Allen.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2021-4, a resolution adopting a new personnel handbook, policy handbook.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Allen,
Aye.
Counselor Potter,
You're muted, Lorna.
there you go. Okay,
You're
Lorna
muted,
Potter.
Lorna. We didn't hear you, Lorna.
Oh, brother. Aye.
Thank
Counselor
you.
Williams,
Aye.
Counselor Webb,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next resolution, number 2021-05, a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding to participate in the Childhood Trauma Informed Network. Chief, you want to talk a little bit about that? And one of the questions I had, Chief, for you was, prior to last December, when they enacted this, December 2020, what kind of was the policy when there was a report that came into your office, and how you connected with the school district, and what was the process there? Was it working, or is this
Well, there really hasn't ever been an official process to contact the school in most situations, and honestly, most of the time it never happened. If we came across children that were involved in trauma, we dealt with our part while we were on scene, and then once we were done, and the school may not have ever heard anything about what happened over the weekend or that night or whatever with these kids. This basically just opens up that communication portal a little bit and allows us to share. You're not really sharing any information. We're just sending them a notice that these children were involved in something, or they witnessed something that was traumatic and could be traumatizing, and it could affect their their performance within the school that day, or even further, and they might require more counseling. So being that there hasn't been a policy in the past, I see nothing but positive coming out of this.
Well, I definitely agree with you. You know, in the past, being on the front lines driving school bus, I've had to report a couple of instances of child abuse, and I reported it to my supervisor, and then it went to the district, and then probably to the county. And I think it's a really good thing. It will really help with the problem. Do you see quite a bit of, especially this last year with the COVID pandemic and staying home, and I think there's been a higher percentage of child abuse and definitely.
Yeah, and it's with COVID and everything not going on, our actual child abuse reporting while kids are not in school dropped significantly. Because a lot of our reports of child abuse come directly from the school through the DHS portal, or from their hotline. And yeah, once everybody started going to school at home, those reports dropped immensely.
Thank you, Chief. That's all the questions or comments I had on that.
Okay.
Anybody else?
So one quick thing, Mayor Hobart, when whoever makes the motion, when you make the motion to approve the resolution with the title, also approve the policy. You need that approved, right, Chief?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Would any council person like to take on that task? Councilor Allen, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we pass resolution number 2021-5, a resolution approving a memorandum and policy of understanding to participate in the Childhood Trauma Informed Network.
Thank you, Councilor Allen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Councilor Webb. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Councilor Allen?
Aye.
Councilor Williams?
Aye.
Councilor Webb?
Aye.
Councilor Potter?
Aye.
Mayor Hobart?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Chief Connor, for sticking around.
No problem.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 931, an ordinance changing the zoning and comprehensive plan map designation from residential to general commercial for 1105 Riverside Drive.
This is the ordinance that you guys had the first reading and vote on at the last. The vote was not unanimous, therefore it must come back to tonight's meeting for the second reading and vote.
What's council's wishes?
You're muted, JR.
JR?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Stephanie. Did you say you need a second reading?
Yeah, so I need someone to make a motion to adopt it or hold the second reading and adopt ordinance number 931 as titled. Then we'll go through the motion and then I will perform the second reading.
Councilor Webb?
So I'll move that we adopt ordinance number 931, an ordinance changing the zoning and comprehensive plan map designation from residential to general commercial for 1105 Riverside Drive.
Thank you, Counselor Webb. Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to the motion made on the floor?
I'll second that motion, ordinance 931.
Thank you for the second. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Webb,
Aye.
Counselor Allen,
Nay.
Counselor Williams,
I'm a nay.
Counselor Potter,
Nay.
Mayor Hobart.
Aye.
Motion fails.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Go
Can I
ahead.
make, I went down there and I looked around and I saw the same things that JR did. I could hardly get in there with the way the cars were parked. I could hardly get into the place. And approving that from what it is to the general commercial zone, I just don't see how it's going to work. Under what it's the way it's set up right now, it just doesn't seem.
No battery.
Somebody talking?
I think it's someone's computer.
You're muted.
Go ahead,
So-
JR.
The way I understand it, Counselor Potter Goodman changed her vote. And so this motion's failed. I think as long as she knows how she voted, I think she could always reconsider her vote at this time. Of course, that's up to her. But I just wanted to point that out. That was the difference in the vote as far as the first time and second time.
Well, I'm not going to have reconsideration on this. I've thought about it, and the last council, when we had discussions about this, there was some things in there that I thought were not a person that owns a business should be more responsible than this owner who never showed up
Can I say something? Sorry.
Sure.
I have a lot of concern if we should just let it fail and not talk about it, because I have concern that we're going to get in a legal problem. Speaking about a property owner when they're not here and passing it once and failing it the next time, I think we just let it die before we say something on the record that we're going to be held to.
Okay.
Okay. I think it's okay. If you guys want to vote to not pass it, that's fine. That's your decision. The more you discuss it, then those things can be used against us instead of it just being I'm not for this anymore. And that's fine. Is that okay?
Okay, I'm not for it anymore.
Okay. I don't want you to feel like you have to explain it, because then that could set us up for something.
I get it. I get it.
Okay. Okay.
Counselor Webb.
So then what's the city's recourse? Then we have to notify them they have to remove RVs? Okay, so we're going to be
Yep.
kicking people out of the park.
Yep.
Matt was saying that we could do a waiver during COVID. Is that true or not?
He said that they would not qualify for what's called a variance.
Josette,
Yes.
would you please clarify exactly what we are voting yes or no on? What's the bottom line that you're either approving or disapproving of?
So currently the zone that the 1105 Riverside Drive is under does not allow for anything other than manufactured homes. Currently in the park, there are manufactured homes as well as recreational vehicles, RVs. The only way the RVs fit in his park is if his zone changes from residential to general commercial. So the denial of general commercial means he's no longer in compliance with the residential standard of having the manufactured homes only. And so we will have to ask him to have the recreational vehicles or RVs exit within, I think you probably have to give them 30 days notice to get into compliance with the residential zone standard.
Okay, so the condition of the street is not a question.
No, and once you hit the threshold of that property, that's private property. So it's not a city street, it's their own street to maintain.
Okay, I don't want to be on the record of having people kicked out of their homes. Can I change my vote?
I would propose holding a whole new vote.
I didn't hear you, Stephanie.
I would hold a whole new vote, so you'd be calling a whole new motion.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to reconsider it then, Councilor Williams, and hold another vote?
Yes, Mayor Hobart.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Point of
Go
order.
ahead, Councilor Webb.
Point of order for a motion of reconsideration
Thank
has to be
you.
made by the majority vote. So it'll have to be made by somebody that was a nay.
I make the motion that we take another vote.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second's been made. Anyone like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 931? An ordinance changing the zoning and comprehensive plan map from residential to general commercial for 1105 Riverside Drive. Councilor Williams.
We can't hear you, Steph. So she's saying that you voted for the motion on the table, which was reconsider ordinance 931, the right to vote for it. So vote for the right to revote right now.
Okay,
Go ahead, Steph. Call the roll.
thank you.
Councilor Webb,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councilor Williams,
Aye.
Councilor Potter,
Aye.
Councilor Allen,
Aye.
motion carries.
So now the ordinance 931.
Thank you for being patient with me. This is a learning process for me too.
Completely.
It is for all of us because it comes up so rarely.
Okay, would anyone like to so move to adopt ordinance 931? An ordinance changing the zoning and comprehensive plan map designation from residential to general commercial for 1105 Riverside Drive. Councilor Williams.
I will make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 931, an ordinance changing the zoning and comprehensive plan designation from residential to general commercial for 1105 Riverside Drive, Vernonia, Oregon.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion on the floor?
I second that motion for 931.
Thank you, Councilor Potter. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Point of
Mayor
order,
Hobart?
Mr. Mayor. Point of order.
Go ahead, Councilor.
The word map was missed in the reading of the title. Is that an issue, Stephanie?
I didn't catch it. Ordinance number
Let me
931.
repeat it.
Clarify for
I'll repeat it word for word. I would like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 931, an ordinance changing the zoning and comprehensive plan map designation from residential to general commercial for 1105 Riverside Drive, Vernonia, Oregon.
Thank you, Councilor Williams.
You're welcome.
And a second was made by Councilor Potter. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councilor Allen,
Aye.
Councilor Potter,
Aye.
Councilor Webb,
Aye.
Councilor Williams.
Aye.
Motion carried. Would any councilor like this ordinance to be read in full? Hearing no such request, this is the second reading of ordinance number 931 by title only. Ordinance number 931, an ordinance changing the zoning and comprehensive plan map designation from residential to general commercial for 1105 Riverside Drive. This ordinance will become effective in 30 days.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Just a brief little tidbit so you guys know, I am working on putting together a little cheat sheet of motions and processes. Dale and I had a discussion, and it would be incredibly valuable, and tonight just proves that that would be the case, not only for you guys, but for me. Because I have the thick book, but these things come up so rarely that there's no way we could all remember how to properly handle them. So it is coming.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie. Moving on to correspondence. I do have a little bit of correspondence. I'd like to talk about the Zoom conference we were on last week. Josette and I attended a Northwest ACT meeting on transportation in our Northwest region, and we got some information about the repairs on the Riverview Bridge. They will start to begin that process this year. It's on the slate for repairs. More than likely that process will take place in the fall, and they will have one lane open on the bridge. They will have 24-hour flagging during the whole process. So it will be impacted a little bit, but traffic will be able to go through on the north or south main 24 hours a day. So just to give you an update on that, it was kind of good to participate, and with that, we tried to get a new bridge, but just lack of money. So doesn't look like we're going to be able to get a new grade. So that's all I have on the correspondence. So anything you want to add to that, Josette?
No, they did set up a meeting for April 8th to go over, to have us look at our TSP, because there is some infrastructure money coming, and they wanted the different communities to pitch something out of their TSP to be on a list that potentially may get funded if the infrastructure money comes to Oregon like they plan. So my plan is to go with the next ones on the line, because they're basically kind of in order, or ones that would fit them, which would be safe routes to schools, things like that, right out of our transportation system plan. So they just asked for us to formulate a list at this point for April 8th of items out of each person's plan. I think we're probably not likely to have any of Vernonia's done, because the ones they had on there were the Longview Bridge, some pretty huge infrastructure things that are on the county's TSP. But we'll throw ours in there and see if anything sticks.
Counselor Webb.
So when they're doing the repairs, are they going to have an impact to pedestrian traffic on it? Did they mention that? Or unofficial salmon counters?
Yeah, so the when it's going to be down to one lane, it's going to be when they're removing the paint and it's tinted, so as to not let any of the flakes fall in the Nehalem. They did not talk about pedestrian. I believe they'll do something similar where they'll have a tight tunnel on one side that pedestrians can one way go through, probably not past each other very well. But that's when the one lane comes into, is when they have it tinted and they're blasting off the paint.
Do we have much school children traffic through there? Or are you picking most of them up? Rick?
There's not. There are some kids that walk to school across the bridge. But I don't, it's just going to have to, the flaggers are going to have to really take over and, cater to the pedestrians first over the vehicles. And I do see a problem with big lowboys and yarders coming through there. So probably the county or the city will have to notify the big timber companies and the loggers, and they might have to reroute their equipment that way during that time period. But that's about all they. Go ahead, Josette.
Well, so Rick, they'll have to put out a notification similar to that they did when we had the little bridge fixed by the dilapidated mobile home. They had to send it out to all CDL holders in the state.
Yeah.
So they'll do that again.
Yeah.
Whatever the restrictions are, they'll have to send that out. ODOT will.
Yes. That's about all we know. So it's likely it'll start this fall. So. Okay. City Administrator report.
Okay, so I sent this to you guys this afternoon. We did get notification from Congresswoman Bonamici about the American Rescue Plan Act, which is the $1.9 trillion bill that Congress passed. There will be money coming to the state, counties, and cities. She sent us a breakdown of what the Pacific Northwest cities could see allocated or estimated to be allocated to each of them. And Vernonia was listed at their estimate being $460,000. It's not yet outlined what this funding can be used for, but they did mention water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So we're waiting to see what the strings are to those infrastructures. We wouldn't probably go with broadband because the private industry is already kind of taking that on, but I'm interested in water and sewer because we have water and sewer projects. I don't know if ours will qualify. I did email back Allie, who is her contact at the office, and she said they're excited to see what the strings are too, but they're still waiting, and they're going to send us the information once they have it, and I'll bring that to you guys because that may change some of the projects or how we're going to fund some of our water or sewer projects, or maybe they have something else in there we want to fund that they would allow for it. But there will be requirements for cities to do certification of their project through the U.S. Treasury. So it's going to be similar to the COVID funding where we had to document what we were going to do with it and then get sign off, and then it gets allocated to us. So just interesting to think that potentially there's money to fund something. So then the trees, bushes, etc. was my next section. The 10 trees for Spencer Park Phase 3 are ordered, and those will be here the first week of April. The city's also ordered the plantings that follow the landscape architect's design for the CZ trailhead at Adams and Maple. So he had two versions there. One was vine maple. I didn't go with vine maple. I'm like, that is not something we want. So it's going to be some capital flowering pear, which is, they looked beautiful. And then the bush type small bushes are heavenly bamboo. They're not really, they're a bamboo, but not like a bamboo. They stay kind of bush form. They have a good red and green color. So that was our other option other than vine maple. So then we also ordered hedges for around the columbarium. We're doing a red barberry kind of hedge from, and one of the things that Ben's kind of been adamant about, I don't know how many of you have been to the cemetery, but there's a Holtz Memorial hedge, little neat brass stake, but there's no hedge behind it because the deer basically took the hedge out. He's hoping that once we get those installed and planted, he's working with Rachel Organ and some of her volunteers to get, there's 40 of them that go around the columbarium and along the entry there, that we would rededicate that hedge, have the Holtz family come up and actually move the marker to the new rededicated hedge. So that's what we've got going on as far as bushes and trees go. I'm still working with Mike Peel to try and get the Hawkins cottonwoods dropped one at a time. We want to kind of talk to Mike about how he's going to haul them out of there so Tim will know what lengths and what to do with the different sections of the trees. So we're still working on that. The Archie Dass Dog Park improvements. So Holly Vaughn and I believe it's Beth that used to be at the pet store did a ton of fundraising for the Archie Dass Dog Park from the community. And they're still holding on to the money that they raised because the grant from the city covered everything else. So they're going to be doing we're going to be doing some installations of some activity elements for dogs. So they've picked out kind of a cool platform. We're going to remove the grass underneath it, put down chips so that we're not fighting weed whacking grass all the time. Some weed fabric and then some chips underneath these elements. And then we're going to reuse the twirl slide that was at the old Anderson Park playground. It was like a green tube spiral slide. We're going to use sections of that as doggy tunnels. We found this really cool little element where dogs like to go in and out of those. So you can buy them for $2,000 or you can reuse what's behind the water plant. So we're going to reuse the old sections. And then city public works staff has 2 work orders in when weather permits. One is putting a water spigot there by the sign and the little Ramada gazebo for people to water their dogs or get water for their dogs. When they come to the park, a lot of people just bring water for their dogs, and so that's one of the things that was part of the ultimate plan. And then finishing across the street, making some more parking area. The city owns the lot directly across the street, and they have a few spots, but doing some more clearing, removal of soil out of the floodplain and bringing in some rock to make a nicer parking area there so the neighbors don't have people parked every which way. The Hiroshima peace tree, so staff did do further research. There is going to be no way for us to find out if it's a female or male. So we're going to notify the Parks Committee of Council's determination that because we can't figure out if it's female or male, we can't take the risk for the horrible smells that we've researched that come off of those. And so we will send them a letter outlining the decision to not get that tree and the research behind it. CDBG, so staff's working on our intake document, which is the very first step. It used to be called a project notification intake form a couple of years ago, and now it's just an intake. But we have to provide the basic information from our engineer, a map, and all these different elements to be allowed to formally apply for the CDBG that we're going for the Springboard Sewer Project. So we're almost completed with that. It should be done by the end of the week and sent to CDBG, and then they'll send us a thing that says, okay, you're allowed to formally apply. And then we start working on that application. The Class Up Sewer Project, which is the sewer line that's the new sewer line that's coming from 6th Avenue down the Class Up right-of-way to 4th Avenue to solve an old problem with the sewer main crossing private property. In the old days, nobody cared, and they, instead of going straight, they just cut 45-degree angle across someone's property with the sewer main. And so Tim completed installing all of those trees. He had a heck of a time. The adjacent neighbors were not happy about it. He did a stellar job at staying calm and not losing his temper in the face of lots of disparaging kind of outbursts. So bravo, Tim. If you see Tim, give him a pat on the back. So the next step is that the trees will get yarded down to one of the property owners who's taking the trees. And then we'll get moving on clearing the stumps that are in the installation area. And that's what I've got going on. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Councilor Williams.
Couple quick questions. Would you like, I'm buying one of those trees. You want me to bring 250 to the city hall? Is that the right thing?
That'd be great, because then I want you to pick out which tree you want of the ones that
Oh,
are.
cool. And second question is, will that dog watering faucet be on a standpipe with the big big lever, or will it just be a little twisty job?
So it's going to be the old-fashioned type, the frost-free with the lever.
Good.
So then when we do close the park in the winter, we can lock that off so we don't have water stealing or anything like that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Webb.
Well, I'm really disappointed that we passed up Logger's Bane, vine maple, as a tree. I will tell you, you want a fabulous jungle gym, plant a big growth of vine maple. I grew up, neighbor had I don't know how many hours I spent climbing around in that vine maple. We used to play chase in it. You couldn't touch the ground, and round in there we climbed. But
Oh my gosh.
oh yeah, and Viney's pretty purty too. So But whatever,
It is.
I'm not gonna pass judgment on it, but that is called logger's bane. So where are we at on our racial justice issues as far as the training and also tracking complaints? Have we talked to Corey how we're going to do that? I don't want that falling off our plate too far.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a reminder, Josette.
So no, I'm with you. It's still in the back of our minds. With COVID, the training's kind of we're stuck. And the Richardsons did just have a new baby, so I'm not bothering Corey with any of those things at this moment. But yeah, it is on our list to revisit it.
Okay.
Stephanie?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm scheduled on a equality and inclusiveness, much longer titled training in September, and they're discussing opening it up to other people within everyone's entities. They're trying to figure out whether or not it'll be live or recorded in order to accommodate everyone, but I'm keeping an eye on it. So once I know if it'll be available to all of our public officials, I will get right on it and get you guys all signed up. We'll let you guys know, and then we can get it scheduled. But it's somebody who's very well known. He sounds like a really good speaker. I have a lot more information about him in writing, just not in my head. So I'm working on that part of it.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Any other questions for the city administrator? Counselor Allen.
Yeah, Josette, all the COVID money we got, and council talked about wanting you to check into the faucets and soap dispensers and sand sanitizers, all automatic in the bathrooms. Where did we ever end up with that?
So where I remember, we didn't go with the faucets or the because of the retrofitting and all of the cost and timing. You guys ixnayed that, as far as I remember, unless I'm remembering it wrong. And then the hand soap thing, I looked into a couple of versions trying to go through our carrier, and I haven't gotten back whether or not the automatic, because we get those for free when you buy the certain products. So I'm trying to find, not very many of them are going to do it for free so that's kind of a hiccup in it. Usually you get the mechanism, the housing for free when you start with a line of certain soap, but nobody has the free, so we'd be paying for each one of those and then kind of locked into buying that certain kind that fits in there.
So
I can look up the
nothing,
minutes, but I thought you guys went against the anything to do with the on-off automatic faucets. Am I wrong?
well, I know you were having some problems getting an estimate on that. I'd have to probably go back and look. I thought we were moving forward on foaming soaps and, hands-free stuff. And we had all that COVID money, and I just kind of wanted to get an update. Did we improve anything?
Yeah, so we have the stations. We have hand sanitizer stations here in the library with the automatic, you just put your hand under it type thing. But I don't have, I'd have to look back in the minutes, JR. I thought you guys said the ixnay on the rest of it.
We got the laptops.
We got the laptops. We paid for the COVID police funding stuff. We got Shannon's, all of her curriculum for homeschooling, her sanitizer station, all of the blockades and different, what do you call it? And then we did get not part of that money, but we did get all the PPE from Casey Garrett. So we got units of wipes and masks and all that kind of stuff that we've got stockpiled and then distributed to the different, for cleaning and wiping stuff down. And but let me pull up the minutes, because I don't remember. I thought, and I could remember wrong, but I thought we didn't go. I thought you guys said no, don't go with that. But let me look it up. I'll get back to you guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And then also, I'm just curious if you had a chance to look at the play shed after last rain or two.
Yeah, I didn't see any leaks or wet spots. The last 2 times I went and checked it after kind of a rain, because it does blow in a little on the sides, but I was looking for those kind of weeping spots and I didn't see any.
Did they ever get the pictures for you that we requested?
I'd have to ask Angie. I know she requested them, but I'd have to pick her brain and see if they sent anything. She also did volunteer her son with his drone to go get any picture we want, so I got to see which version she went with. But she was asking them to do that.
Okay, then one final thing. I just wonder if we're going to have council staff relations training this go around.
You mean like we did last time?
Exactly.
Currently we don't have it slated in the budget to do another like presentation like we did with, was it John?
Yeah.
If that's something you guys are wanting to do, then let me know. We can put some money in the training budget.
I was just curious if that was a one-off special for me or what.
You probably most likely weren't the person that it was for. There were some issues ahead of that, so.
Okay, I'm just trying to plan my summer out.
But if you guys are interested in that, we can set money aside for it. I just didn't know. We don't seem to have that same kind of issue right now.
There was 2 more items I forget. I'm sorry, I went through a lot of information today. Back when we went up there and went for the walk up on Mellinger, that you guys were going to bring some information back that I still haven't seen. I'd have to look up that again to, I'll send you an email, I guess, and wonder where the update is on some of that. I think half of it you have got, but some of it you haven't got back to us with.
Well, one of them was the estimate for the full elevations and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've asked him to get us, when we talked with Robert on our CDBG call, because he's doing some of the estimates for Springboard, I said, let's look for, we know what it'll cost Don to topo it and do the monument, but then the design of the element is what I want the engineering firm for the elevations and kind of the plan of where catch basins would go. So they're working on that. That was the thing I was.
There was 2 more
the
items on the action items. It wasn't that. I'll have to look again. I'll send you an email.
I actually just talked to Robert about it today when I was getting his availability for the work session. So he is working on getting that information together. And then I'm working on the information to see what other cities do about these platted areas. And then we'll be putting all of that together as a package, and we'll send it to you the week before your work session, which is on the 12th. We're on it.
Okay, so that 12th is about the sidewalks only? Is that what I heard right?
Sidewalks and waivers of remonstrance.
The sidewalks, curb and gutter. It's the fee in lieu or not, the waivers of remonstrance, all of that, whole package.
That's what it was. It was some more information, I think, on what other cities had done as far as numbers and things. So I don't know, I'm getting kind of late, sorry.
Okay, anything else for the city administrator? Okay, thank you, Josette. Move on to items from the mayor and councilors. Any counselors have any final discussion before we move on to action item summary? Counselor Webb.
JR brought something up on our tour on Mellinger. I went over, made a tour of the Painted Hills this weekend, and there was one of these plastic culverts underneath the trail. And I gave it the JR test of stepping on the end. And you could jump up and down on that thing and it wouldn't collapse at all. Just as an aside, there are different grades of culverts, and there's ODOT approved grade culverts. So we might want to check with Robert on ensuring that we're getting the ODOT approved culverts put into our streets. But anyhow, and if nobody's ever done that tour before, I would highly recommend it. It's at very beautiful and interesting trails and different levels of hikes. And so anyhow, and we happened to hit a beautiful weekend. So I almost got sunburned.
Where is that, Dale?
Well, we stayed, and that was the other thing. First night we stayed in Fossil, Old Fossil and Fossil. And lo and behold, our motel owner says we've got brand new internet server here. Blue Mountain. And I said, and he goes, yeah. He says, man, I've got like 100 meg, speed here. And then I just put new equipment around, and you should have 50 meg. And we did try it out. Had no problems. It did seem to be very fast. I asked him, what he thought of it, and he said, well, so far so good. So they're getting a good report. Kind of interesting. We were looking at each towns on their sidewalks and their trees or lack of trees and different things. They've got a lot of brand new sidewalks in that town. It must have been kind of the same things the state was doing all around, putting new sidewalks in the bulb outs. And of course, they just came in right behind everything and put in new sewer mains and tore up all their streets. So now they got streets with gravel crossings and was kind of bad. But other than that, town was pretty clean. And then we stayed in the little town of Mitchell. And that's just a wide spot in the road. But the hotel there was great. And anyhow, they didn't have much anything in that town. And I did get a picture. I'll have to bring it in Fossil. It's a sidewalk to nowhere because they had the new sidewalk down the main street and then one of the side streets. And here's a stub goes out there about 10 feet. And there she ends. There's nothing within sight anywhere else down the street. So I'll bring that to our next workshop.
Thank you, Dale. Counselor Allen.
Yeah, I just wanted to nominate Randall E. Holtz for Citizen of the Year. I don't know how to do that, but I thought I'd put it out there.
Jamboree Committee.
Well, they don't have an email or answer anybody. It's the most disorganized bunch I've ever dealt with, and I'm still waiting for a call back. So don't hold your breath for having Jamboree in this town this year. I'm sorry to say. I hope I'm wrong. I'm willing to help them, but I can't get a call back, email, text. I don't know what to do. I guess I got to go into the bank. So anyway, that's my rant on that.
I'm not even going to try to follow yours or Dale's, so I'm just going to move on to action item summary.
Okay, so I have that staff's going to move forward on the travel organ grant. We're going to send the letter discussing the Hiroshima Peace Tree denial to the Parks Committee. We're going to figure out what happened with the drone pictures or display shed pictures of the roof and look up kind of the background of what happened to the hands-free, and if that's still if I'm wrong and it's still a rolling thing, or documentation that council stopped with the faucets and stuff. Just to get an answer. Anything else that I'm missing?
I don't think so. Anybody else? If not, I will adjourn this meeting at 10:40 p.m. Wishing everyone a good evening, and just to remind everyone, executive session on Wednesday, this Wednesday at 6 o'clock in person. And maybe Stephanie, could you provide some forms for our grading system that we used last time?
All necessary materials will be present for this top secret executive session.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.